Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many, and with all that cloud it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius, some coastal fog though developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning, starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week, and in the southeast we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won.
Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you all the way through until 6 p.m. A cracking show awaits. Here's what's on today's menu. In an exclusive sit-down today with GB News, Nigel Farage blasted Sir Keir Starmer, claiming his demise is now inevitable.
Goodbye. Because you're not going to be back. There won't be another one. You know, the end of his premiership is inevitable.
And the Reform UK leader also tore into wind turbines and called the invasion of Britain a disaster. You'll not want to miss it. And we expected fireworks between Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer at the G7, but instead the US President brutally blanked the Prime Minister, as you can see on your screens now. Was this brutal smackdown reminiscent of lonely Theresa May at the 2016 Brexit summit rejection? Was this Sir Keir Starmer's final humiliation? Even so, he's...
I intend not to walk away from this, but to carry on with what I was elected to do, which is to serve this country and bring about the change that people desperately need in their lives.
And the first closed grooming gang cases have now been referred back to police forces for re-investigation as part of a mammoth national review where lines of inquiry may have been missed. The rape gang scandal goes on. It's time to go back in time and make sure everybody gets nicked. And a video of a group of Muslims praying at a sacred London War Memorial has been slammed as an act of dominance. The Shadow Secretary of State, Nick Timothy, he blasted, "It is not welcome. It should be stopped." Does he have a point? Or is he causing an unholy row over nothing? That's all coming up on today's show. Well, to show, it's a pleasure to have your company on this afternoon. Sir Keir Starmer once was enjoying a 174-seat majority, the Superman of the Labour Party, now political kryptonite. Look at how he was blanked at the summit, the G7 summit in Evian, frozen out, on the sidelines, looking every inch like he was at his own political funeral. The phantom of the summit, friendless and alone. And guess what Keir Starmer is bringing back? Another summit. That's right. Here's a guy with more summits in his diary than a champion rock climber. Just what we need. Another summit in Britain this time. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission chief, being invited in July. One last opportunity to water down Brexit. We'll be live from Evian. Plus, stick around for exclusive excerpts of an interview I did earlier on today with Nigel Farage in blistering form. The full interview to go out at 7 o'clock tonight on GB News Tonight. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so, or scan the QR code on your screens now. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 3:03. Former Defence Secretary John Healey said his resignation was necessary in securing the future of Britain's armed forces. Giving a statement in the House of Commons this afternoon, Mr Healey said, "At this dangerous time, the current defence investment plan falls well short of what is required," adding that our adversaries do not follow timetables set by the Treasury. While speaking at the G7 summit in France today, Sir Keir Starmer said Britain's defence budget is rising, but admitted the next stage of military investment will involve difficult choices. He said the government is having to make tough decisions about where funding is prioritised.
I have taken the decision to reallocate money from other departments. Obviously, the new Defence Secretary is reading in, and we're talking to him about how and what we will spend that money on in terms of the capability. And he's got his own thoughts now about what the priorities should be. And so I think that's the discussion we're in the middle of at the moment.
Well, away from the row over defence spending, Sir Keir Starmer is also using the G7 summit to step up pressure on Russia. Britain has announced a new sanctions package targeting Moscow's shadow fleet and the finance networks helping fund Putin's war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister says Britain will keep increasing pressure until Russia's war machine is brought to a halt. Well, the Conservatives have welcomed more pressure on Putin, but Alex Burghardt says it is very hard to believe that the Prime Minister will take real action.
What I'm very worried about is that the Prime Minister is going to the G7, making all of these promises, but he hasn't presented his defence investment plan, which is almost a year late. His Secretary of State for Defence resigned last week, John Healey, as did the Armed Forces Minister, because they said the Prime Minister is unable and the Chancellor is unwilling to do what's necessary to keep Britain safe. So I think that his colleagues at the G7 will be looking at him thinking, does this man really put his money where his mouth is? And is this the last time we're going to see him?
Elsewhere, Donald Trump has defended his proposed peace deal with Iran, saying it is fair and good. Speaking also at the G7 summit, the president denied claims from Iranian media that the framework includes a $300 billion reconstruction plan. Trump insisted the only thing that matters to him is that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. He warned there would be unbelievable consequences if Tehran tried to develop or buy one, but denied seeking regime change in Iran. The UK's largest water company has moved a step closer to nationalisation after the government objected to a proposed rescue deal. Thames Water serves around 16 million customers, but has been heavily criticised over sewage spills, leaks and poor performance. Its lenders have offered to write off billions of pounds of debt and put new money into the company. If no rescue deal is reached, Thames Water could collapse within months, leaving ministers ready to step in and keep water and sewage services running. Well, Environment Secretary Emma Reynolds says the offer from the company's lenders doesn't do enough to protect consumers or the environment.
Over the last 15 years, we've seen underperformance of Thames Water, pollution incidents and repeated failures. I have written to Ofwat to set out my early concerns that the creditors' proposals don't do enough to protect consumers and the environment, and overall, I don't want Thames Water's consumers to have to pick up the bill for their failures.
710 small boat migrants crossed illegally from France yesterday, the biggest single day of crossings this year. A total of 11 migrant boats made it across into UK waters, including 6 that travelled from Dieppe, 100 miles south of the usual launch sites around Dunkirk and Calais. The 710 total beats the previous highest day for crossings, when 605 illegal migrants arrived in the UK on the 25th of February. 8 closed grooming gang cases are being sent back to police after a major review found potential lines of inquiry may have been missed. The National Crime Agency is looking at cases from 2010 to 2025 where no further action was taken. The review focuses on investigations involving multiple suspects and victims, including allegations of rape. The NCA says it is the most comprehensive and complex investigation into child sexual exploitation and abuse in UK history. And Prince George will attend Eton College from this September, following in the footsteps of his father, the Prince of Wales. Kensington Palace has confirmed that the 12-year-old will become a pupil at the world-famous private school in Berkshire. George is currently at Lambrook School, where he studies alongside his younger siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. Those are your latest GBNews headlines. A quick look at the markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GBNews Finance Report.
The pound will buy you $1.3419 and €1.1567. The price of gold is £3,237 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 10,490 points.
GBNews Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Thank you very much. Now, welcome back to the show. Now, an exclusive sit-down interview with GB News tonight with the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage. That airs in full at 7 p.m. The Reform UK leader has launched a blistering assessment of Sir Keir Starmer's performance at the G7 and reveals what he would raise if he were the Prime Minister.
Well, it's been awkward, really, isn't it? Because he's in the room and the rest are thinking, well, goodbye. because you're not going to be back. There won't be another one. You know, the end of his premiership is inevitable. So that must be quite awkward. Maybe it would make sense for Western countries that are in relative decline compared to China, India, to have a reappraisal of whether they actually think that building wind turbines is going to save us from global warming. I know the American president would agree with that side of the argument, but I doubt that'll happen either.
That was Nigel Farage earlier, and also speaking to GB News tonight. Amidst the news, we have exclusively revealed today that 710 migrants crossed the Channel yesterday, with the total for the year now passing 10,000. Nigel Farage said this.
Well, I don't think 10,000, nearly all young men, about whom we know nothing, could be described as a victory. In fact, in previous times, we'd have said it was an invasion and a disaster. So nothing's going to stop this other than us simply saying, if you come here illegally, you will be banged up, deported, and not allowed to stay. It's the only solution to this.
And finally, at 7 o'clock this evening on GB News Tonight, we'll reveal the Reform UK's leader, his answer to this crucial World Cup question. Should he have a message for the Three Lions team?
Oh, go for it. Go for gold. Go for it. Absolutely go for it.
Is it coming home? Well, does Nigel Farage think football is coming home? Find out tonight at 7 p.m, exclusively here on GB News Tonight. Now let's bring in GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who joins me in the studio in Westminster before we go to Chris Hope in Evian. Let's talk a bit there about Nigel Farage, obviously bulldozing into Sir Keir Starmer, but a lot of people sensing this is the final curtain for Keir Starmer. The summit, he looked friendless, he looked isolated, he really looked a bit forlorn.
It reminded me rather of Theresa May looking sort of cut out, as she did a few years ago. And it's pretty brutal, isn't it? Because these leaders, I think, all know that the Prime Minister's days in office are numbered. He said he's going to fight Andy Burnham or whoever, but it looks likely that he's on his way out. And they all know that. And it's quite hard to watch, actually, on a human level, no matter what you think of the Prime Minister, where he is sort of cold-shouldered, nobody wants to bother with him. But look, he has got to be there. Of course he's got to be there. And worth saying, of course, too, that people like Emmanuel Macron, who's sort of lauding it around, he's hosting it, of course, in France, has his own very serious worries in France. His government collapsed multiple times, and he's another leader who looks on his way out. Emmanuel Merz in Germany, not been in that long, but already pretty unpopular.
OK, Catherine Forster, stick with us for more analysis of the events at the G7 summit in Evian, because Keir Starmer is bracing for what could be his last international summit as Prime Minister today amid tensions with Donald Trump. But he has denied that the US President snubbed him after the pair did not have a one-to-one meeting at the G7 summit. Look at the pictures on your screen there, the brutal slapdown we're talking about. Instead, the Prime Minister met Trump for working discussions with other world leaders. But as you can see there, very much frozen on the outside, wandering around, clueless, friendless, the ghost of Evian. Well, GB News' political editor Christopher Hope joins us now live from Evian. Chris, isn't it funny? Politics can be a brutal business. Sir Keir Starmer went from a political superman with a 174-seat majority in the 2024 general election, now political kryptonite in Evian. He was completely snubbed there by Donald Trump.
Yeah, Martin, well, welcome to the G7 at Evian. I mean, I think pictures can tell one story, but that may not be entirely what happened. Sir Keir Starmer has spoken in the past few moments to reporters. He said he had dinner last night with Donald Trump and the other members of the G7. He sat next to him. They spoke for 2 hours with no one listening in, no interpreters, no one listening in the so-called listening rooms where they make a note of what's being said at these summits. He also sat with him at the various meetings this morning, one looking at security and one looking at the Ukraine issue, that he would say he gets on very well with him. In fact, he did say this: I get on really well with Donald Trump. And although the images you're looking at there may suggest maybe it's just that people are cold shouldering him. That's not what he's telling us out here. He's saying that he is part of the conversation. Of course, there is a cloud hanging over his future. Can he fight off the twin challenges of Wes Streeting and probably Mandy Burnham if he returns to Parliament later this week, or even Al Cairns too? So can he deal with those issues? For the PM himself, though, he's used this summit and a meeting with the colleagues at other channels that do TV reporters for today. He's made very clear he is fighting on. Here's what he told us.
A landslide victory in 2024 for a 5-year mandate for this Labour government. I said at the time, we will both invest in our public services and we will grow our economy. And many people said to me at the time, just as they're saying things to me now, that's not possible here. And if you look at the results, we have invested in our NHS, waiting lists have come down, biggest drop in 17 years just the other week, and at the same time, our economy is stable and we've got the highest growth in the G7 at the moment. So very many times on my political journey, people have said to me, it's not possible. They said it's not possible to turn the Labour Party around, it's not possible to win an election, it's not possible if you do win an election to invest in your public services and stabilise the economy. Wrong every time, and that's why I intend not to walk away from this, but to carry on with what I was elected to do, which is to serve this country and bring about the change that people desperately need in their lives.
There's the PM, Sir Keir Starmer, saying he's not walking away. He's been underestimated all his life. He's seen our critics before. He'll do so again. He's saying that because his name goes forward to the members when the ballot is taken. So other colleagues in the parliamentary party must get the support of 81 MPs. Wes Streeting claims he's there. Andy Burnham, his supporters certainly are keen if he gets back to Parliament to get there. Al Cairns and others may stand against him. Now, there is a feeling, I think, Martin, of the end of days to a degree. I look at Lady Starmer, Victoria Starmer. She's at this summit, the first time she's been at one since the NATO summit in July 2024, shortly after the election of when the Starmers entered Downing Street. So to me that says, well, is his wife thinking I may not be around for Mar-a-Lago, the G20 meeting in November, or even the next UN summit expected in September, or the meeting of the Commonwealth heads of government in the West Indies in October, November time. So I may as well see if I want to be with my husband on this group here and support him. It's not always you get a spousal programme, but Brigitte Macron has laid one on, so they're doing all sorts of visits today as the plus ones, I suppose, of the G7 world leaders. There's also some news here, Martin, to cheer you up. I know you love a bit of Brexit of a Tuesday afternoon. We've heard from the Prime Minister. He met with Ursula von der Leyen today, that's the EU President, and also Alberto Costa, who is the European Council President. They both agreed to hold a EU-UK Reset Summit on July the 22nd this year. So 1 month after you'll be celebrating 10 years of that Brexit vote, Martin, there'll be a summit to reset our relationship with the European Union. On the table will be trying to lift the red tape of people trading food over the border between the European Union and the UK. A freedom of movement idea for young people 18 to 30 to travel between the EU and UK to work. I can hear your excitement, although I can't see you, Martin, in your voice.
Chris, Keir Starmer now is focused on his legacy, the aftermath, what he leaves behind. The social media ban we see as one of them. I've been saying to you since the very, very beginning of Starmerism, his legacy will be to water down Brexit, to baby step back towards Brussels. What better way to do it than one final summit? Sir Keir Starmer's come back from a summit with another summit. This guy's got more summits than the Himalayas. On a serious point.
Well, Martin, I think
we do not need to water down Brexit 10 years after the vote.
Martin, people on the left of Labour, in fact, the polls seem to show that many people feel that Brexit isn't working. I know for you, Brexit is working because it was, of course, the original choice, and you were a Brexit Party MEP. But for some, Brexit isn't working, and so they're trying. And they're trying to reduce the various hurdles between the EU and UK, and that's why they're doing it. I mean, to be fair to Keir Starmer, the reason why he's not here so much is because we left the European Union. In order to meet up with world leaders, he's got to go and do it. So sovereignty means our PMs have to work harder on the world stage. Back in the day of the European Union, you could meet 27 European leaders every quarter in Brussels, and that's what happened. Now you've got to have 27 individual bilateral meetings to have the same amount of dialogue, and that's why. Really, Martin, the reason why the PM isn't around is your fault.
Well, I'm glad that his missus is enjoying a global jaunt. You know, if nothing else, Keir Starmer should have the mother of all gold cards on his air miles. When he finishes as Prime Minister, he spent more time abroad than he has in Westminster. On a serious point, never hear Keir one final global trot around, and he's took the missus with him this time. Keir Starmer, honestly, it takes a special talent to go to a summit and come back with another summit. Astonishing. Chris Hope, thank you very much for joining us live from Evian. And once again, it's been bottled by the Prime Minister. Moving on now, let's get my next guest in. That's the international security expert and the author, superb guest, Azim Ibrahim. Azim, it's always a pleasure to have your company. Let's be brutal. The video we saw there of Sir Keir Starmer floating around the conference, the phantom of the summit, the ghost of Evian, friendless. Donald Trump completely and utterly blanked him. It's brutal.
Yeah, Martin, all of these leaders follow the domestic politics in each of the countries very closely. I think all of them probably know that Starmer is on his last legs, and anything he discusses, anything that he agrees, simply will not last till the end of the year. This Prime Minister could be gone and another one will take its place, and it's just not worth engaging in any conversation with him. And I think it just shows how Starmer has completely miscalculated entire premiership. He inherited, or he won such a significant majority, which he failed to utilise effectively to bring about the change that he promised. And I think the fundamental reason he did that is because he didn't actually stand for anything. Starmerism was essentially opposition politics. His only positions were just to oppose whatever the Conservative government at the time was actually trying to push and what you're trying to position, and that was all he was essentially about. He didn't have a political philosophy, and I think his legacy is going to show that this was essentially just an empty politician.
Azim Ibrahim, what we could have done, what we should probably have done at a summit like this is go and sit down with G7 leaders. Look at what Donald Trump did in the United States, was brutal, simplistic, America first on border control, on being unrelentingly focused on getting the job done. Sir Keir Starmer could have gone to this summit and said to Emmanuel Macron, close the borders, close the beaches, stop the boats, or we're going to stop sending you 600 million quid. He could have said to Giorgia Meloni, why don't you control your borders downstream on the Mediterranean to the African side? He could have said any one of a number of those things, all of those leaders there, but he didn't. And instead, he's come back with another summit. And you know what will happen at that summit, Azim Ibrahim? It'll be watering down Brexit. It'll be yet more freedom of movement. You can guarantee it.
Yeah, well, all of these European leaders actually blame the British for a lot of the border problems. Britain is the magnet that's attracting a lot of these migrants that are coming through Africa, North Africa, the Middle East, etc. If you speak to any of them, they will tell you that their number one destination is the UK. It's simply because they believe that they'll get a lot of free handouts. So the French, the Italians, they all blame the British for being this pull factor. So they blame their immigration problem on the British. And the Brits have lost complete control over the border. You've seen the numbers today, and they just no control whatsoever in terms of who's coming into the country. So the onus is on the British to fix this problem and sort that out.
Azim, you raise an excellent point, and you're exactly right. And many people have been saying for many years, so long as the pull factor is so substantial. Social housing in Notting Hill, endless handouts, practically 0% chance of being deported if you're from Eritrea, Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, and so forth. And maybe a lot of these European nations just believe that they're merely passing through their nations on the way to Hotel Britannia.
Yeah, in fact, if you speak to some of the migrants, as I have, they will tell you exactly that. I remember even seeing a migrant on Newsnight, the BBC's flagship programme, that had indefinite leave to remain in Switzerland, and he said he simply didn't want to stay there because he didn't want to live in a tent. And he paid a people smuggler €3,000 to bring him to the UK, where they put him up in a 4-star hotel and gave him plenty of handouts. So each of these migrants that are coming through, we had 710 just yesterday. Each of them will cost between £50,000 to £106,000 per year. This is totally unsustainable. And all of them communicate with each other. They all know that the UK is the most attractive destination. And in fact, I actually spoke to some of them. It was many years ago, but I remember asking them why they came to the UK, and the answer is very clear. They said that once we are in the UK, there's nothing they can do to get us out. So it's a one-way ticket for them. Other countries will take all sorts of measures to make their life difficult. The Brits, on the other hand, try to make their lives as comfortable as possible. So that is without a doubt one of the clear pull factors for so many of them coming through Europe to the UK.
OK, Azim Ibrahim, we'll have to leave it there now. As a Scotsman in the United States, I'd like to wish the Tartan Army a very good piece of good luck. I think you're going to need it. Talking about one-way tickets, I think that's what you boys will be on the next fly home. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Azim Ibrahim, always a pleasure to have your company. Now, still to come, the National Crime Agency orders police forces to reinvestigate historic rape gang allegations that go back as far as 2010. How about going back even further? That's next here on GB News, and we're Britain's #1 news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The late edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, late edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:28. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the man suspected of captaining the intercepted Russian Shadow Fleet tanker has now appeared in court. And I'm joined now by GB News' national reporter Will Godley, has been at Southampton Crown Court for us. Will, what's all the latest?
Well, Martin, good afternoon to you from Southampton Magistrates Court. Yeah, the man suspected of captaining this Russian Shadow Fleet vessel appeared for his first appearance here at the Magistrates Court today. Of course, that was after this vessel was seized by the Royal Marines and the National Crime Agency in the early hours of Sunday morning. Well, the man who is being charged with supplying a prohibited oil product to a third country. The man suspected of captaining this vessel is the Indian national AJ Pant. He's 38 years old and he appeared in Court 1 of Southampton Magistrates here by video link from Bournemouth Police Station. He was wearing a grey T-shirt. He spoke to confirm his name, his date of birth and also to give an address in India. He also decided to give no indication of his plea. Now, his solicitor said he was only an employee of the vessel's owner and that he was simply following orders. He also said that he was not being paid by Russia. Now, the offence that he is accused of, Martin, carries a maximum sentence of 10 years imprisonment, and it's been sent to Bournemouth Crown Court, where Pant will next appear in court on the 16th of July. Until then, he's been remanded into custody. But in court today, we also heard more details about this shadow tanker vessel and the amount of oil that it was carrying. In court, we heard that it was found to have 98,000 tonnes of oil on board, described as a significant amount, Martin, and the prosecutor described this case as one of having national interest and also international interest as well.
Superb up there. Thank you very much. Will Godley joining us from Southampton Magistrates Court. Thank you for your time. Now, moving on, a huge story for GB News viewers. 8 closed rape gang cases are the first to be reopened as part of a national review of hundreds of investigations into which lines of inquiry may have been overlooked due to human error. Of course, now I'm joined by GB News' national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie Peters, you, our viewers, our listeners think no stone should remain unturned, no matter how far it goes back, no matter how far it goes up the food chain. The rape gang survivors deserve justice.
Yes, and Martin, this is a major development as Operation Beaconport, which is the National Crime Agency's new national investigation on the grooming gang scandal, enters a new phase. Now, they took in about 1,200 investigations from 23 forces that had previously been closed, that were sent to them last November. And they told reporters that they had identified several cases of human error where in those investigations some had been closed with no further action. They took a series of steps in how to respond to the information they gathered. Firstly, they prioritised the 200 or so where there had been an allegation of rape. They prioritised for the first set of reviews, and then using data analysis and through expertly sifting through the information they had with their experienced officers, they have selected some 8 cases that have been sent back to police forces to be reopened. And it's critical to note, Martin, that in those cases, they are ones where they have not previously been subject to a review and where the suspects are still alive. And Martin, I know you say no stone unturned. They have to go back and review every single instance. This is only going back to 2010. So there'll be many survivors with reports where there's been no further action from cases before then who just won't have the luxury or, frankly, the legitimate justice that they deserve of a National Crime Agency reassessment, passing it back for a police force to be reviewed. There have also been some mutterings of concern that police forces who perhaps closed these investigations in error, Martin, are now being asked to reopen them themselves, perhaps having not sufficiently learnt the lessons as to why those human error mistakes were made previously. Errors including not properly investigating suspects or interviewing them, and not engaging with best practice in an investigative manner when engaging with victims and survivors. Well, to that point, the NCA has stressed that as part of Beacon Port, they have trained some 800 officers across England and Wales in how to better respond to group-based child sexual exploitation. And it is also important to note, I think, Martin, that they have produced more documentation training and also an online portal as part of this process. Beacon Port was one of 12 recommendations that Baroness Louise Casey made in her report released on the 16th of June 2025, 1 year ago today. Beacon Port is one of the areas where we have seen the most action, and for the victims and survivors of those 8 cases, this is a step forward, but definitely many survivors across the country will be urging the force to continue their investigation and will hope that theirs are selected as well. There are also questions that I've heard today, Martin, from some victims saying, even if they've already got prosecutions, might they be included in these reopening of investigations? Because, as we know, in so many cases, victims who've been on this channel, been on your programme as well, speaking about how they might have got 5 or 6 prosecutions, but there were dozens, if not hundreds of others involved. It's good that some were sent down and jailed, but plenty more got away with it. There are questions there as well. But a new phase, a new step forward, Martin.
A step in the right direction, Charlie Peters, Operation Beacon Port, but why not go back further in time? Why not go further around the world? How many failed safety officers now work in other countries? Charlie Peters, you and I both know the answer to that. We must keep pushing for justice. Charlie Peters, thank you as ever for the work you do for survivors. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Charlie Peters. I've got some breaking news for you now, and it's a good news story for a change, because the government will not allow plans to cull Dartmoor ponies. Now, here to tell us more is GBNews' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who was in lobby this morning. Just get that beautiful picture back on the screen, if we could, Catherine, because this is a story that we were going to cover, we are covering on today's show, about Natural England decided, in their wisdom, to cull these beautiful, beloved, cherished, internationally renowned ponies on Dartmoor. There was a huge outrage. But now it seems the government has actually done something good.
Yes, so the Prime Minister's official spokesman in lobby, when we asked about this, says that the government will not allow a cull of the Dartmoor ponies.
Hurrah!
You can see them there. They're very beautiful. They have roamed on Dartmoor for 3,500 years, and there's about 1,000 of them. And these were plans put out to consultation, my understanding is, from DEFRA and Natural England. And these new grazing rules that were being put forward, and farmers, some of them were led to understand that 93%, so 930 out of the 1,000 Dartmoor ponies would have to be shot to abide by these targets. People like Kemi Badenoch has said it's total madness from another unaccountable Quango. How do you say it?
Quango.
Quango, of course you do. But Natural England have actually denied that they had the power to do this. And in fact, that's what the government said too. So it's a little bit curious, but this row has absolutely taken off and outraged people, as you would expect, because ponies on Dartmoor are a very lovely thing. I think most people would agree.
Anybody who's driven through there, anybody who's spent time there, as I have, and no doubt thousands and thousands of our viewers have, they're the most beautiful, wonderful natural creatures you'll find. Why, in the name of God, Catherine Forster, did anybody think it was even a good idea to considering cutting a single one of them, let alone such a high percentile? Surely it's their job at Natural England to preserve the natural beauty of England, but luckily the government has sent this policy to the knackers yard, where it belongs. Catherine Forster, a great, good news story. Thank you for bringing a smile to our face in Westminster. Thank you very much. Still to come, a biographer of Winston Churchill has accused the National Portrait Gallery of a barefaced lie over a claim in an artwork that the wartime Prime Minister deliberately starved Indians. Once again, they're trying to destroy Winnie, the greatest Prime Minister we've ever had. That's next here on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now through the next few days we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many, and with all that cloud it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius, some coastal fog though developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning, starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry, with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week, and in the southeast we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A9 is blocked near Blair Athol due to an incident. On the M4 westbound, congestion occurs between junctions 24 Coldra and 26 Malpas. The A19 southbound in Stockton-on-Tees has a lane closed for a broken vehicle. The M1 northbound at junction 25 entry slip is closed. The M25 anti-clockwise between junction 16 and 15 has one lane shut, and the M27 eastbound entry slip at junction 5 has one lane closed. And on the trains, delays affect cross-country and East Midlands railway services between Liverpool South Parkway and Manchester Oxford Road. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's 3:41 now. A biographer of Winston Churchill has accused the National Portrait Gallery of a barefaced lie over a claim in an artwork that the wartime Prime Minister deliberately starved Indians. Well, let's bring in the historian and the senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, superb gentleman, Philip Kisley. Philip, there's no public figure in history, perhaps, has been more of a lightning rod to the wokerati than Winston Churchill. And here we go again.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an out-and-out barefaced lie. This is about the Bengal famine of 1943. This was caused by a typhoon, Martin, which wrecked infrastructure and destroyed crops. And what Churchill did was went out of his way to alleviate the situation, actually putting our people at risk, actually, because we're in the midst of the Second World War. So that's one thing. What they try and do is two things here, Martin. They try and disappear him. So they try to remove his image from the currency. And they also try to monster him. They try to make him the evil incarnate and, you know, starving poor Indians, when this, of course, is not the case. So this is going on. This is an ongoing thing, and it's happening for a couple of reasons, really. One, because he's very much the symbol of Britishness and who and what we are. And also because he's an historical figure that is British and related to good. In other words, he beat the Nazis, he beat National Socialism, he beat Hitler. So the wokerati, the post-colonialists want to attack him for those reasons. But there's something else as well going on here, Martin, and this is about attacking our heritage, sullying our heritage and rewriting our history. The really important thing here and the really worrying thing here, that this is being done through one of the institutions. This is the National Portrait Gallery, for God's sake. The taxpayer is paying for this. So this is really worrying, not only that it's, you know, the National Portrait Gallery presenting blatant disinformation, but also this is definite evidence of the march through the institutions, that the institutions have become stupid.
Philip, beautifully put, and you're exactly right. They specifically target Churchill for the same reason they target the cenotaph, or they put those anti-Semitic tropes on Big Ben, because they know it hurts us. It's specifically and deliberately targeted. So in that sense, Winston Churchill should take it as a compliment. That's what the great man would have done. But here's a question for you, Philip Kisley.
Yeah.
Is it time to defund these institutions who are taking taxpayer brass to basically monster one of our most cherished parliamentarians, in fact, public figures of all time?
Yes, I think you're right, Martin. I think it is. I think we should absolutely have a look at funding, not just with institutions, not just with the heritage sector, but also with education. So it isn't just things like Arts Council England. It's also things like the Arts and Humanities Research Council, which gives millions and millions and millions of pounds to academic funding. The taxpayer pays for this. We are paying for misinformation, the destruction of our own heritage. Now, what they want to do, Martin, is this. If you take away someone's heritage, if you sully it and you say that it's rubbish, more than that, you say that it's wicked, you make that society, you make modern day society fundamentally unstable, because societies are like individuals. If you don't know where you come from, or if you think your past is inherently wicked, then that impacts massively on your behavior and your confidence in the world. And that is, of course, what they're trying to do. Now, we have to push back on this. Look, it's stupid. It's blatant disinformation, but it is coming through our own institutions, and it's tiring, it's demoralizing, it's all of those things. But we have to say no, and we do have to energetically push back. And if we have a different government in the future, they really do need to look at this funding. So you are absolutely right, Martin.
Philip Kisley, a speech Winston Churchill himself may have been proud of, may I say. Marvellously put. Splendid to have on the show today. You've got a fine brain. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today. That's the Historian Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley. Thank you very much indeed. Now, both the Natural Portrait Gallery and the artist have been approached for comment, and so far, they've been as silent as the Winston Churchill statue outside here in Parliament. Coming up next, Queen Camilla has thrown her royal support behind a grassroots effort to rescue a cherished East Sussex boozer from potential closure. We'll be speaking to the governors next. But first, though, is the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
A heatwave is building across western parts of Europe at the moment, and that heat is going to be pushing further eastwards through the next few days. Whilst there is a lot of sunshine mixed in with it, and temperatures therefore getting into the mid to high 30s, possibly even low 40s, with that heat, worth bearing in mind, we could see some hefty thundery downpours developing across, well, many areas. Some heavy or more persistent rain affecting Greece as well through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking largely dry, often sunny and hot through the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess Anne and the way that she has brought up her family is really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, you've got daughter and son who've not taken on royal titles, who've just got on with their lives.
I think now, in retrospect, we can say it was an inspired decision of the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, not to have her husband receive a grand peerage title, which meant, of course, that her children would just be plain Mr. and Mrs. Zara is Mrs. Tyndall, he is Mr. Phillips, and that's allowed them actually to have a much more normal life, not being in the necessary glare that attaches when you have the HRH prefix to your name and become a duke or a duchess or whatever. And yes, they have had great lives in the private sector.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dorothea, how does it feel being here today, joining other veterans?
It's marvellous, because for years after the war ended, nobody knew that women had even done anything during the war. And also, they suddenly discovered that, good heavens, women have got brains. They can think for themselves and for the country. And it was naturally assumed that everybody would willingly do their bit for England. And they would have. We had one purpose in life, which was to free the world from Nazism.
The People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
To a lot of people, there's just a series of names, and they are to us. But suddenly we come to a name, and we knew that guy. This one down there, Daddy Circus. I served with him. I know what a lovely man he was. Terrible waste that he dies. There's another guy, Lieutenant Fraden, who was my signals officer in the 2nd 4th Essex. Was transferred to the 2nd Essex when we were transferred to the Dorsets. He got killed by a sniper. What a wicked waste. Wicked waste. And then the powers that be are warming up for another one. Doesn't make sense. I bet God above is regretting giving man his free will. That's all I can think.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Time is 10 to 4. You've been Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, the Queen Camilla has said she is full of admiration for a campaign to save a pub in the village where she grew up. Her Majesty even asked campaigners to keep her updated on their fight to stop the Fountain Inn in Plumpton Green in East Sussex from getting the chop. Let's now speak with the chairman of the Fountain Inn Community Benefit Society, Stuart Wallace. Stuart, what a magnificent story by royal intervention, Camilla sweeping in to try and save the day.
Fantastic, isn't it? You couldn't write it. I mean, it's the support of dreams, really. We're very proud in Plumpton of Camilla being from the village and being brought up here till she went off to school. Patron of the college, often at the racecourse, and now joining in with us to save a pint. So,
And
yeah,
Stuart,
well, good.
And Stuart, there was a handwritten letter, I believe. We've got a picture of that. And may I say, when we get that on the screen, what a magnificent signature Queen Camilla has. Look at that. If you're a graphologist and you look at that sweeping letter, see, it's like a majestic wave.
Yeah, it's incredible. We wrote to, via one of the group, wrote to the Queen. He knew her from growing up, and their parents were friends. And very quickly she wrote back, offering her support and admiration, and she's made a donation, which she's asked us to keep between us, which is fair enough, but her name and her support means the world to us, you know. Rural pubs and pubs in general are dying away, and we want to save this one, because once a pub's lost, it doesn't come back. So the way we're trying to do it, that'll secure the future for generations to come.
You know, Stuart Wallace, one of my favourite pictures of all time is the old Queen mum pulling a pint of bitter. Do you remember, in the Young's Brewery? And I've got one in my local. And Prince Charles, as he was then, was also pulling a pint. You know, there's nothing that connects people more with us commoners, may I say, than the royal family pulling a pint. But this takes a biscuit. Stepping in to try and save your boozer. This is the stuff of legend.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, for me, what I really wanted to do is bring the community together. And, when you live in a village where it's famed for, obviously, Camilla being a resident growing up, Jimmy Page used to live in the village, a number of other big names, and obviously Plumpton Racecourse. I thought, if anywhere can do this, it's us. And there are some great other examples locally in East Hoadley and King's Head have done this, and so we are gathering pace, and obviously the Queen's name being put behind the campaign has brought a lot of attention, certainly yourselves, and media interest today. And for us, it's about raising awareness, keeping the pub going. And hopefully some generous people out there that want to help us buy the pub, we'll be welcoming if anybody wants to join in, not just the Queen.
Stuart Wallace, you dovetailed in there magnificently to a further demand for funds. Who can blame you? Can we just get a picture again of Queen Camilla with that pint of Guinness in her claw? Because there's just something majestic. Look at it. There's something majestic about royalty raising a glass. And I tell you what, there'll be a lot of people out there raising a glass to you, Stuart Wallace. A magnificent story. I truly wish you all the best. Keep us updated as well. If the boozer starts going from strength to strength, please send us through some pictures. We'd love to keep the fire burning. Chairman of the Fountain in Community Benefit Society, Stuart Wallace, by royal appointment. Magnificent. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, still to come, we expected fireworks between Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer at the G7, but instead, the US President appeared to blank the British Prime Minister, the ghost of Evian. The absolutely alone Sir Keir Starmer, he came back from a summit with another summit. Just what we need. That's next here on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many. And with all that cloud, it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius. Some coastal fog, though, developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain, which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning. Starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry, with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week. And in the southeast, we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Traffic is congested on the M4 westbound between junctions 24 Coldra and 26 Malpas. The A19 southbound in Stockton-on-Tees has one lane closed between junctions A67 and A172 due to a broken-down vehicle. The M58 eastbound in Sefton is fully closed for a vehicle fire between junctions 1 and 3. The M11 southbound in Essex has one lane closed between junctions 8 and 7A due to a collision. On the M27 eastbound entry slip at junction 5, a broken-down vehicle has also closed one lane. For more travel news, go to GBNews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won.
Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you all the way through until 6 p.m. The cracking show awaits. And here's what's on today's menu. In an exclusive sit-down interview with GB News, Nigel Farage has blasted Sir Keir Starmer, claiming his demise is now inevitable.
Goodbye. Because you're not going to be back. There won't be another one. You know, the end of his premiership is inevitable.
The Reform UK leader also tore into wind turbines and called the invasion of Britain a disaster. You'll not want to miss it. That goes out on 7 p.m. here on GB News.
I intend not to walk away from this, but to carry on with what I was elected to do, which is to serve this country and bring about the change that people desperately need in their lives.
Today, Sir Keir Starmer vows to fight on at the G7 summit in what could be the Prime Minister's last time on the world stage. But was he snubbed by the US President? Pictures on your screen seem to suggest that. But the Prime Minister denies claims that the two leaders failed to have a bilateral meeting. And the first closed grooming gang cases have been referred back to police forces for re-investigation as part of a mammoth national review where lines of inquiry may have been missed. There should be justice at last for the rape gang survivors. And a video of a group of Muslims praying at a sacred London War Memorial has been slammed as an act of dominance. The Shadow Secretary of State, Nick Timothy, for the Conservative Party, has blasted. It is not welcome. It should be stopped. Does he have a point? Or is he causing an unholy row over nothing? That's all coming up on today's show. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Sir Keir Starmer appeared to be snubbed at the G7 summit earlier on today. Donald Trump blanking him at a public meeting. But it's worth pointing out that Donald Trump had a fallout with practically everybody in the entire room. Giorgia Meloni from Italy wouldn't allow him to use bases in the Iran war. Friedrich Merz, the German leader, said that Donald Trump had been humiliated by the Iranians. Emmanuel Macron, last time Donald Trump left the G7 summit, he said Emmanuel's wrong about everything. He gets everything wrong. Mark Carney, well, they don't agree on anything. Is there anybody in that room that Donald Trump gets on with? And that points out, why bother going? What's the point of these summits? And we've learned today that Sir Keir Starmer is coming back from the G7 summit with another summit. Hurrah! Just what we need, this time with the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. You go to a summit, you come back with another summit. It's like Sir Keir Starmer collects them. More summits than a Himalayan rock climber. Coming up next, get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. Or scan the QR code on your screens now. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 3 minutes past 4. Former Defence Secretary John Healey said his resignation was necessary in securing the future of Britain's armed forces. Giving a statement in the House of Commons this afternoon, Mr Healey said, at this dangerous time, the current defence investment plans fall well short of what is required, adding that our adversaries do not follow timetables set by the Treasury. Defence Chief Sir Richard Knighton has backed John Healey's claims, warning that Britain's armed forces will have to dial back training and operations if they do not receive more money. While speaking at the G7 summit in France today, Sir Keir Starmer said Britain's defence budget is rising, but admitted the next stage of military investment will involve difficult choices. He said the government is having to make tough decisions about where funding is prioritised.
I have taken the decision to reallocate money from other departments. Obviously, the new Defence Secretary is reading in, and we're talking to him about how and what we will spend that money on in terms of the capability. And he's got his own thoughts now about what the priorities should be. And so I think that's the discussion we're in the middle of at the moment.
Well, away from the row over defence spending, Sir Keir Starmer is also using the G7 summit to step up pressure on Russia. Britain has announced a new sanctions package targeting Moscow's shadow fleet and the finance networks helping fund Putin's war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister says Britain will keep increasing pressure until Russia's war machine is brought to a halt. Elsewhere, Donald Trump has defended his proposed peace deal with Iran, saying it is fair and good. Also speaking at the G7, the president denied claims from Iranian media that the framework includes a $300 billion reconstruction plan. Mr Trump insisted the only thing that matters to him is that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. He warned there would be unbelievable consequences if Tehran tried to develop or buy one, but denied seeking regime change in Iran. The man suspected of captaining the intercepted Russian Shadow Fleet tanker has appeared in court. Ajay Pant, a 38-year-old Indian national, gave no indication of his plea. He's been accused of breaching sanctions by supplying or delivering prohibited Russian oil. The MV Smiritos is now being held off the coast of Weymouth with 24 crew members still on board. The government has confirmed that it will not allow a cull of Dartmoor ponies amid warnings from locals that a scheme to conserve the landscape would devastate numbers of the endangered breed. Campaigners say requirements to cut livestock grazing on the moors, commons under new contracts from Natural England could lead to the removal of up to 90% of its hill ponies, which would likely have to be culled. But the Prime Minister's official spokesman said this lunchtime that the government won't allow a cull. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch labelled the reports total madness. And Prince George will attend Eton College from this September, following in the footsteps of his father, the Prince of Wales. Kensington Palace has confirmed the 12-year-old will become a pupil at the world-famous private school in Berkshire. George is currently at Lambrook School, where he studies alongside his younger siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. Those are the latest GBNews headlines. A quick look at the finance.
Going through the ceiling, finding the floor. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GBNews Finance Report.
The pound will buy you $1.34 and €1.16. The price of gold is £3,226 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 10,507 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Thank you, Katie. Now to politics, and today Sir Keir Starmer is bracing for what could be his last international summit as Prime Minister today, amid tensions rising with Donald Trump. But he has denied that the US President snubbed him after the pair did not have a one-to-one meeting at the G7 summit. You can see pictures on your screen there, Donald Trump seemingly shaking hands with everybody around Sir Keir Starmer, but turning his back on Sir Keir, who looks a little bit lost at the back of the room there. Now, instead, the Prime Minister met Donald Trump for working discussions with other world leaders. And meanwhile, on a GB News exclusive, Nigel Farage has launched a blistering assessment of Sir Keir Starmer's performance at the G7.
Well, it's been awkward, really, isn't it? Because he's in the room and the rest are thinking, well, goodbye, because you're not going to be back. There won't be another one. You know, the end of his premiership is inevitable. So that must be quite awkward. Maybe it would make sense for Western countries that are in relative decline compared to China, India, to have a reappraisal of whether they actually think that building wind turbines is going to save us from global warming. I know the American president would agree with that side of the argument, but I doubt that'll happen either.
You can watch the full exclusive interview with the Reform UK leader at 7 p.m. tonight here on GB News, on GB News tonight. I'll see you then. Now let's join our GB News political editor, Chris Hope, who joins us live from Evian. Chris, welcome back to the show. So a political storm has broken out back here. The newspapers are running with the story that Sir Keir Starmer was snubbed by Donald Trump. The pictures there show Donald Trump turning his back on our Prime Minister with shades of 2016 Theresa May when she was friendless at the European Union summit. But Number 10 saying that's not the case at all. They got on like a house on fire. What's the truth, Chris?
Well, as ever, I think pictures can give you what appears to fit with a narrative when often that isn't quite the case. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has told us today that he spent 2 hours last night sitting next to President Donald Trump at this G7 dinner. They then attended 2 sessions today of the G7 when they discussed security and Ukraine. And again, he sat next to President Trump. He's talked a lot to Trump. Donald Trump himself can't speak to everybody. He's got meetings with Narendra Modi tomorrow, of course, the Prime Minister of India, but he can't meet everybody, and the PM is getting some time with Donald Trump. I don't know why it appeared that he was snubbed at that moment on those TV channels, but on these TV images, but that often happens, that you can't always line up at the right time. So, yeah, certainly the PM's team would say he is meeting with Donald Trump. There was images earlier showing the PM a bit late to a meeting of the G7. I should tell you, he was late because he was talking to the British press. He was very kindly delayed going to that meeting because he was late for a meeting with reporters here. So he's trying to fulfill lots of commitments, which can mean sometimes he can't get to the right place at the right time. But to the PM here, he's well aware of the chat at home. He's well aware of the critics. He's well aware of Wes Streeting probably claiming he's got 81 MPs, the number required to challenge him for the leadership. And the PM has again said in terms he's not going anywhere. Here's what he told us earlier.
Landslide victory in 2024 for a 5-year mandate for this Labour government. I said at the time, we will both invest in our public services and we will grow our economy. And many people said to me at the time, just as they're saying things to me now, that's not possible here. And if you look at the results, we have invested in our NHS, waiting lists have come down, biggest drop in 17 years just the other week, and at the same time, our economy is stable and we've got the highest growth in the G7 at the moment. So very many times on my political journey, people have said to me, it's not possible. They said it's not possible to turn the Labour Party around, it's not possible to win an election, it's not possible if you do win an election to invest in your public services and stabilise the economy. Wrong every time, and that's why I intend not to walk away from this, but to carry on with what I was elected to do, which is to serve this country and bring about the change that people desperately need in their lives.
There you have the PM there saying he's been underestimated before and he's fought back and won, and his name goes forward to members of the party, as is the right of the leader of the party. All that drama will take shape this Friday and this weekend, we expect, when we have results of by-elections coming in. Either way, it will be a dramatic moment on GB News. In terms of the PM and his relationship with Donald Trump, he said no, Donald Trump hadn't raised the social media ban. He also told us no, there was no concern about defence spending raised with him by Donald Trump, and in fact the meeting was good, and when he's talked to him they got on really well. The PM is planning for the future, Martin, and you'll enjoy this. I know that Brexit cheers you up, and like a shark in the ocean, your eyes go back into your head as you feast on a Brexit argument, Martin. But the PM is meeting with Ursula von der Leyen in Brussels on the 22nd of July, nearly a month after the 10th anniversary celebrations for the Brexit vote by Brits in 2016. The PM has told us that he's talked with Ursula von der Leyen. They welcome the new Channel Migrant Plan put out there by the European Union. They updated each other on the UK's work with France to deter and intercept illegal crossings. They want people on both sides to feel the benefits of the UK-EU collaboration as soon as possible. So, Martin, don't worry about Brexit, because Ursula von der Leyen and Keir Starmer, they're going to sort it out at a summit on the 22nd of July, just next month.
Hurrah! Hurrah, just what we need. Let's go to a summit and come back with another summit. It's like a pair of socks for Christmas. There's a certain predictability to this, Chris Hope. And I've been saying to you for a long time, my friend, and as you know, a lot of people out there, 17.4 million of them, thought that the guy who was the champion of the people's vote to campaign to cancel Brexit might actually try and water down Brexit in Evian. Watering down Brexit. And now Ursula von der Leyen being welcomed to another conference, another summit. And I've been saying it all along today. Here's a Prime Minister with more summits than the Himalayas, more summits than a rock climber.
Well, Martin,
we don't need another summit. Leave Brexit alone.
But Martin, that we do. I'm going to say it's a privilege to be here for GB News viewers and listeners, and to do, I think I've done 10 interviews with presenters through the day from the G7 summit. But this matters because when you're outside of the European Union, it's on you. The sovereignty is on the elected politicians to go and make the case for why the UK is a good place to invest in the world, why we need to work with other countries on keeping our world safe. When you're in bigger blocks, you give away sovereignty. You also lose the right to be at these summits because the European Union would do it for you. That ended, Martin, when you campaigned and won the Brexit debate, and that's why these summits matter.
Like those Japanese soldiers, Chris Hope, you and I will still be talking about Brexit probably in 30 years' time, hiding somewhere in the reeds, reminiscing about the good old days of Brexit. Chris Hope, thank you very much for joining us from Evian. You've been superb. Thank you very much indeed, my friend. Now, speaking of my next guest now, it's a former political director to Keir Starmer, and that is Luke Sullivan. Luke, it's a pleasure to have your company. It sincerely is. Is there a time in every Prime Minister's premiership where they know it's over, and you go to a summit like this, and everyone there knows it's over, and that precipitates the kind of images that we saw a moment ago where Donald Trump is seemingly giving Keir Starmer the complete cold shoulder?
Good afternoon, Martin. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on GB News. Look, I think, as Chris Hope said in your package, pictures can often be misleading, and they can fill a narrative that people want to buy into. But look, the Prime Minister, as he said in that clip to GB News, is fighting on. And I think you never get to be the Prime Minister. The individuals who get to be Prime Minister think that they are the only person who can do the job. By the very nature, they don't want to give it up. And therefore, yes, I think Keir Starmer is very clear-eyed that he is fighting for his political life. But I think all the indications are that he is going to fight for all his political life to stay as Prime Minister, because he still thinks he's the right person to lead this country.
He might think that, but I don't think a lot of people in his party do, particularly those who are circling the wagon to try and push him out as Premier. But on a serious point, when you reach the twilight of your premiership, which a lot of people think is incredible to say when you look back to that 174 seats majority in July 2024, you have a legacy period, the final furlong, where you look ahead to what you leave behind. Now, the social media ban, Luke Sullivan, very much fits into that package. Sir Keir Starmer very passionate about that. Something else he's passionate about is Brexit, or more to the point, reversing Brexit. Am I being cynical to say that a final summit with Ursula von der Leyen could be a baby step back towards Brussels?
Well, I think what Keir Starmer would say is that this is something that was a key part of the Labour manifesto, that he will say as he said in the clip, that he got that mandate from the British public for a 5-year period, as he said, to deliver. Now, this is in the manifesto. It was very clear. It was a clear part of the Labour proposition to the voters that they don't want to reverse Brexit. They want to have a better, closer relationship that sticks to the key manifesto lines, that honours the Brexit parameters that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party put in their manifesto. And those were very clear on things like freedom of movement, a customs union, and the single market. Now, of course, people will argue about whether this is the right, getting closer to Europe. But I think what is very clear from the public is they don't want Brexit to be reopened as a big debate, maybe as much as you and Chris and others may enjoy discussing it, but what he has got a mandate to try and get a better deal for Britain that helps people with the economy and jobs, and helps get people's shopping bills down.
That hasn't happened so far. And a lot of people, Luke, sort of will be wondering if a better Brexit, well, that's all open to interpretation, a better Brexit for those who chose to remain or chose to reverse Brexit, as Keir Starmer did, that's just provably out there, are closer ties. Nobody would be mad enough to give the second referendum. It'd be too chaotic. But it could be worse, death by 1,000 treaties, for example. The Erasmus scheme, freedom of movement, greatly benefits European nations far more than it does the United Kingdom. It throws our borders open to potentially hundreds of thousands of young people at a time where youth unemployment in this country is already perilous. A lot of people think, is this Prime Minister's heart in Britain or is it in Brussels?
Well, look, let's take those issues in order. I think on the issue of Erasmus and this, replacement scheme, I think the government have been talking to the EU about trying to get an opportunity for young people to have an experience, whether that be education or work. Now, absolutely right. Youth unemployment is a real trouble in this country. And I think, the work that Alan Milburn did in his report the other week shone a light on some of the real systemic issues. And I think you're right. Nobody here is talking about hundreds of thousands of young people having free movement, but young people having an opportunity to travel and study is an important thing as long as it's done with proper parameters. Look, I don't think there is any sense that this government is going to go back on Brexit. And actually, I think, it's being attacked by those who do want to go back on Brexit for not doing that. If you look at the Greens and the Lib Dems, that's one of the things they are attacking the Prime Minister for not doing. I think these are all things that the government are saying that they're planning to look at, which are within the parameters of the manifesto. And look, I don't think anybody thinks you could reverse Brexit without there being another referendum. And I understand why people make that political charge. It's just not where this Labour government are.
OK, superb stuff. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Appreciate your time as ever. Superb guest, the former political director to Keir Starmer, Luke Sullivan. Thank you very much indeed. Now let's bring in GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's with me here in Westminster. Well, it's kicked off a bit, hasn't it? It's like Keir Starmer was late for the photo call. Now it was because he was talking to the press. Fair enough. He was seemingly shunned in those pictures there by Donald Trump, but actually he wasn't. He had a 2-hour contretemps, sit-down meeting, tete-a-tete, call it what you like, with the US president last night. But it is worth pointing out that Donald Trump has fallen out with everybody at this conference at some point or another. He doesn't get on with any of them.
Yeah, he's quite tricky to manage. I think we can all agree. And just looking at some of them, I mean, Giorgia Meloni was seen as the Trump whisperer. She criticised Donald Trump over comments he'd made about the Pope earlier in the year. Also wouldn't let him use Italian military bases. He said that she's not the same person as she used to be. Chancellor Merz, back in April, said that the United States had been humiliated over the war with Iran. Donald Trump pretty quickly pulled some troops out of Germany. Macron, he's previously said that he doesn't know what he's doing, that he gets everything wrong, took a pop at him over his wife. And Carney, let's face it, got the job of PM of Canada largely because Donald Trump was saying we want Canada for ourselves.
I have to interrupt. Thank you, superb. I've got some breaking news for you now, and it's this. It's been reported that a Russian Navy frigate has fired warning shots at a British yacht in the Channel. Extraordinary. This comes after the Royal Navy boarded the Shadow Fleet tanker, which has been sanctioned by HM Treasury. GB News understands that British and French ships are now mobilising in response. High drama in the Channel. Let's bring in GB News national reporter Charlie Peters now for all of the latest. Charlie, very concerning. What's the latest?
And Martin, it's not just Royal Navy and French ships that are mobilising, but also Royal Navy aircraft, because a Wildcat helicopter has been seen active over the Channel this afternoon, according to tracking data available online. That's been deployed recently amid these reports of a Russian frigate firing at a vessel. And this is the Russian frigate in question. This is the Admiral Grigorovich. It is part of Vladimir Putin's Black Sea fleet. It has been present around British waters and in the English Channel for several weeks now. In April, it was seen regularly escorting tankers for Putin's sanctioned oil shadow fleet through the English Channel as they complete that journey, often through the Suez Canal, to various customers for Russian oil, including China, and they make their way towards the various ports in the north and the west coast of Russia through the Baltic Sea and indeed the North Sea as well. Now, of course, this latest incident comes, as you said, Martin, after the Prime Minister ordered a team of Royal Marines commandos to board the Smirtos Russian shadow tanker in the early hours of Sunday morning. But what we're hearing today is that that ship on your screens now, the Admiral Grigorovich, a Russian frigate, fired warning shots at a civilian ship, a British yacht in the English Channel. It's unclear when precisely this occurred. It was reported originally by a global maritime risk advisory service, EOS Risk Group, earlier this afternoon. However, there are other reports saying that this occurred in the very late morning. Either way, there has clearly been a swift British military reaction to this reported incident in the English Channel. Not only do we have the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm Wildcat helicopter spotted in the English Channel, we've also got two River-class patrol vessels in the Channel, HMS Mersey and HMS Tyne. They actually followed the ship through the Channel, that is the frigate on your screens, on Monday afternoon before these warning shots were fired, we believe, earlier today, highly likely to have occurred in the late morning, based on the information we're gathering at this stage. And as we said before, the Grigorovich has been seen escorting several Russian tankers through the English Channel and through British waters in recent weeks and months. It's part of Vladimir Putin's Black Sea fleet of ships. It's been around British waters now for several weeks, and we'll be waiting for further information about when and why these warning shots were fired on what is being reported was a British civilian vessel. We've seen now some live pictures of the marine traffic in the channel. As you can see, it's an extremely busy waterway. It always is. Now, it comes also amid an escalation in developments in terms of what the Ministry of Defence has shared with us with regards to Russian military activity, particularly when it comes to maritime operations. We were told in April at a press conference by the then Defence Secretary John Healey that Russian submarines had been operating in and around British waters. We were told by the Defence Secretary that spy vessels also attached to the Googie service had been seen tracking undersea cables in the North Atlantic, and that the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force had tracked 2 spy submarines and an attack submarine on those strategic locations, of course critically important to Britain's economy. I could also remind our audience that in 2021, the Russian Defence Ministry, they claimed that they fired warning shots before a Royal Navy warship in the Black Sea. That was ahead of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in the February of the next year. So the Defence Ministry previously claiming to have fired warning shots. We don't know precisely why the Russian frigate, the Admiral Grigorovich, fired warning shots in the Channel earlier today. But those are the reports that we are receiving, and we can share that information about a Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm Wildcat helicopter operating in the English Channel at the moment, observing that location. It's quite near Weymouth, which is, of course, off the Dorset coast, which is where the Smirtos vessel is currently being anchored, while 25 crew members remain on board. One man, the captain of that vessel, has been charged and appeared in court earlier today, attended by our colleague Will Godley, who had all of those details. Now, the Ministry of Defence did claim, with regards to that 2021 incident, that any shots had been fired, and said that it was the case that its destroyer had been conducting innocent passage through Ukrainian territorial waters. So there have previously been incidents, Martin, where one side has claimed warning shots fired, the other has denied it. That was Russians making claims 5 years ago in international waters in the Black Sea. This is, of course, British waters in the English Channel, and there has been significant criticism of the government over the last year for the extent to which the Russian shadow vessels have been able to move in. I can tell you now that the Ministry of Defence has just said that it is investigating these reports of warning shots being fired in the Channel. That just coming into us, Martin, that the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, is investigating these reports that the Russian naval frigate, the Admiral Grigorovich, fired warning shots at a civilian vessel, a British yacht, which is said to have sailed closely towards the Russian military vessel. But as I was saying, Martin, this incident comes after the government has been under significant criticism for how Russian shadow fleet tankers and indeed military vessels have been able to bypass and sail through British waters, both through the Channel and also some attempting through the Guyuk Gap, through Greenland, Iceland, UK, in the northwest of the country near Northern Ireland, after the British government had passed sanctions but been accused of not acting on them. Of course, we saw that action on Sunday morning, but these are the latest reports we're getting of this escalating situation in the English Channel between the United Kingdom and Russia.
Charlie Peters, some fresh information coming out here, and it appears that the incident, the shots were fired roughly 500 yards away from the civilian yacht, roughly 20 nautical miles south of the Isle of Wight, between Normandy and a crucial point outside of UK territorial waters. So that's a crucial point, because if it had been inside UK waters, it would have been an absolute outrage. Some may have considered that as an act of war. To fire on a UK civilian craft within British waters would have been reprehensible, unforgivable. Yeah. But a key detail here, if it's in French waters, not acceptable. But nevertheless, Charlie Peters, this is a sign of a stepping up. We saw Keir Starmer, his properties being firebombed by Russian agents in court yesterday. There's a hostility brewing here from the Kremlin, Charlie Peters.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is one of the key messages that the Ministry of Defence and ministers and spy chiefs have been briefing out for years now, that warfare increasingly is not just about bombs, bullets, tanks and jets, but also about activity being taken, quote, sub-threshold, asymmetric warfare that Russia often seeks to probe and cause crises in the United Kingdom through alternative means. We've heard about that BBC investigation revealing the true background of L Money, the man who paid 3 men convicted of the firebombing at a series of properties linked to the Prime Minister. That is one of several examples of Russian attempts to destabilise the security of the United Kingdom. And Martin, similar questions will be asked now. That is it in any way linked that 2 days after Britain finally follows up on the sanctions powers that have been passed for many years by intercepting a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker with Royal Marines commandos, is it linked now that the Russian military is firing on a British civilian vessel that was a British yacht in those international waters, firing in the English Channel? The British ship reported, we're told, that the Grigorovich had fired warning shots after the two vessels sailed close to each other in the Channel. Now, it has been observed escorting those shadow oil tankers and also loitering off the Suffolk coast. That is, of course, the Grigorovich, the ship on your screen right now. But it's been involved in these sorts of operations for a long time. Happened now, can confirm, at 11:40 a.m. this morning between the Isle of Wight and Normandy. And as we said before, Martin, an MOD spokesperson has confirmed that they are investigating reports of an incident in the Channel. It's also understood that there were no injuries or damage to that British yacht. HMS Tyne and HMS Mersey, the patrol vessels of the River class, said to be shadowing that Russian frigate. But clearly, Martin, a very delicate situation now for the MOD to manage, particularly when it already has quite significant assets deployed, not only guarding one intercepted Shadow Fleet tanker, those Royal Navy commandos who are managing that perimeter as well, but they're also now dealing with reports of this escalatory incident with the Russian military, a Navy vessel, firing warning shots at a civilian vessel in the English Channel.
Earlier on, Charlie Peters, by the way, excellent reporting, thank you. Earlier on at the Evian G7 summit, Keir Starmer was asked about the increasing hostilities between the United Kingdom and Russia, and here's what he had to say.
And justice has been done, so I'm pleased in that respect, particularly for my family who are affected by it. I think it has to be seen in its broader context. Here we are at the G7. We've just had the Ukraine session, and actually there was real unity in the room, in the G7, about the fact that Ukraine is doing better now, regaining territory, that the sanctions are having a real impact on Russia, and a real sense that now is the moment for all of us as a G7 to ramp up the pressure. And obviously you'll have seen this morning we put on even further sanctions in relation to Russia.
Charlie Peters, just to add an extra political dimension to this, of course, sanctions are being discussed at the G7 summit in Evian. We've just heard in the last 20 minutes that Volodymyr Zelensky has announced he's counting on fast-tracked European Union membership. Ukraine wants to be fast-tracked into the EU, and he said here Ukraine needs creative solutions to quickly join the European Union, or Russia will find ways to block it. Perhaps, Charlie Peters, there's some coincidence in the fact this is in French waters off of Normandy, when sanctions on Russia, Europe seems to be coalescing against the Kremlin, against Putin. Suddenly, it's all kicking off in the Channel there.
And Martin, you know, when Russia started this war, this full-scale invasion, it was using the tactics of the Second World War, high-mobility warfare, launching an attack straight at the heart of the Ukrainian government, seeking to rapidly take over Kiev. It failed, and it's now fighting with the tactics of the First World War. Attritional trench warfare has left us with this horrendous meat grinder conflict with untold casualties, horrific numbers coming out of Eastern Europe every week, every month. And amid that attritional sludge and that slow, heavyweight fight that's going on, Russia is seeking alternative opportunities to get the upper hand in this conflict, which is including these very niche and very precise and very specific sorts of capabilities and operations that we've seen in the last few years, but particularly in the last few months with what the former Defence Secretary, now John Healey, revealed in April. It felt like a rather large press conference for a relatively minor operation. Only 700 personnel, if I recall correctly, from that Downing Street press conference, involved from the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force in monitoring that Russian operation. But it was revealed, I think, at least in part, to demonstrate the sort of activity that the MOD and UK PLC was regularly deterring and responding to. This is an even more dynamic and kinetic sort of operation to demonstrate the risk from Russia and the activity, the sort of activity it is conducting to hassle and threaten not only the United Kingdom, but as you quite rightly point out, Martin, France as well, critical to the support for Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainians. Amid this attritional suffering that's going on, where the Ukrainians have resisted far more and are actually achieving some more territorial support and gains in recent weeks than many anticipated, Russia has been turning to these disruptive and destabilising actions, such as plots in the United Kingdom, both in terms of arson attacks and wider destabilisation. But now a Russian warship firing warning shots on a civilian vessel in the English Channel after the British government finally intercepted an oil tanker, part of the Russian shadow fleet, supporting its income to maintain its war operations amid a manpower and economic crisis. This is clearly an escalatory step. We'll wait for more information from the Ministry of Defence, which says that it is now investigating these reports of what happened at 11:40 this morning between the Isle of Wight and Normandy. No injuries and no damage to the yacht, but the first time in a long time that a Russian vessel has fired on Britons.
And it's also just worth pointing out again for those tuning in, this incident is believed to have taken place between the Isle of Wight and Normandy, crucial point in French territorial waters. So if an English vessel had been fired upon, Jolly Peters, in English territorial waters, all hell would have broken loose. But that would be a direct act of war in the eyes of many. But as it turns out, it's in French waters, and perhaps no coincidence, Charlie, as I just said, that over there in Evian in France, world leaders are gathered discussing a short moment ago. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, sat down with the German Federal Chancellor Friedrich Merz, discussing air defence support for Ukraine, the further strengthening of ground forces, the situation on the front line, the result of Ukraine's long-range sanctions, and also, to repeat that point, Volodymyr Zelensky counting on a fast-track membership of the European Union. Now, Charlie Peters, a lot of people with long memories will remember that NATO expansion to the east was always seen as a red line, not just by Putin, but by Gorbachev, by presidents way before Putin, and membership of the European Union similarly seen as confrontational in the eyes of the Kremlin. And indeed, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who met his counterpart in Turkey today, he warned earlier today that a future European Union membership of Ukraine will be exploited by those who want to militarise the Union. And suddenly, Charlie Peters, an incident in the Channel. The Kremlin is sending out a warning shot. It's acting with aggression here. It's demanding that people stand up and take notice of what they're doing. But Charlie Peters, there's no getting away from this. This is an extremely hostile action.
It is, Martin, and we've seen the Russian military operate by, quote, buzzing our international and British airspace by flying bombers nearby to test the efficacy and the reaction time of the quick reaction force for the fighter jets that are based throughout the United Kingdom, particularly in Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland, where there is a key QRA that takes place there on a regular basis, having to respond to flights from Russian military activity towards Scottish and British airspace. Just some more details I can bring you now, Martin. This Russian Navy vessel fired those warning shots at a distance of approximately 500 yards. And as you said before, 20 nautical miles south of the Isle of Wight, so outside, as you said, UK territorial waters. HMS Mersey, one of those 2 patrol-class vessels seen in the Channel yesterday, monitoring the vessel. It's still monitoring that vessel at this time. And also, we can tell you now that a seaboat from HMS Tyne, another one of the River-class patrol vessels, has visited the civilian yacht that was fired upon to gather details from the crew and also to affirm that they are safe. We are being told earlier that there was no damage to the British yachts, the civilian yachts, and no injuries as well. But we can report now that a seaboat from HMS Tyne has visited that yacht to gather those details and assess it. Now, investigations by the MOD are ongoing, but we understand that the Ministry of Defence is viewing this as an isolated incident and not linking it to Britain's military interception of the Smirtos vessel in the early hours of Sunday morning when Royal Marines commandos were fast roping onto that vessel. So the MOD investigating, they're saying that it's an isolated incident. That's what we understand is currently their thinking, not linked to the operation on Sunday morning. But there's no getting away from the fact that these actions have taken place so soon after Britain finally used the main nautical weapon in its arsenal when it comes to stopping the funding of Putin's war machine.
Johnny Peters, excellent summary as ever. I'm joined by Catherine Forster in the studio. Catherine Forster, this is precisely the kind of hostility you've been hearing about on the political circuit now for some time.
Yes, exactly. Russia seems to be engaging in some sort of grey war with European countries. I was very struck at the European Political Community Summit last October in Copenhagen. Donald Tusk, the Polish PM, Poland now spending 4.8% of their GDP on defence because they're very close to Russia and very well aware of what Russia is up to, saying then it's war, not as we understand it in the traditional sense, but things like this, things like the shadow fleet. I was on a frigate a couple of years ago with the Prime Minister off the coast of Estonia, where the crew were telling us about the difficulties they have, these undersea cables that are absolutely critical to our national infrastructure, and how Russian boats interfering, hanging around, up to no good. The Royal Navy is now having to expand a lot of effort in monitoring what Russia is up to in the Baltic Sea and elsewhere. And all this adds to this picture that we have of Russia. OK, there's a stalemate in Ukraine, but the Russian economy now is built on war. They are producing weapons. They are churning through very, very unfortunate young men at pace. And we've had these warnings that Russia could decide to go after a NATO ally as soon as 2030, perhaps try to take a chunk of Estonia and test what we would do. Would America come to our aid? I don't think we can be sure of that. Would Article 5 stand up? That, you know, an attack on one is an attack on all. Russia are clearly probing our weak spots. And, you know, John Healey and Al Carr's making very powerful speeches in the Commons this afternoon, basically saying we need to step up now because, you know, clearly there are very real risks facing us right now.
Excellent points, well made. If you're just joining us at 4:45, a quick recap on what we know so far. We have reports, sailors on a Russian warship. You can see that warship on your screens there now. That's the Admiral Grigorovich, beg your pardon, fired a warning shot at a civilian yacht that came near it in the English Channel today, around about 500 yards away. We understand the confrontation took place in the sea between the Isle of Wight and Normandy, so that's outside of the English territorial waters, clearly inside the French waters, the Normandy tranche of the coast there. It's the latest sign of rising tensions, of course, between the UK and Vladimir Putin's country, coming straight the day after 2 men were found guilty of that terrible arson attack on Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, believed to be agents of Russia. And at the same time, at the moment in Evian, G7 summit leaders are meeting, and very much on the menu are sanctions against Russia, the expansion of the European Union to Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky asking that is fast-tracked, and it's happening very, very quickly. Charlie Peters, are you still there? Because this kind of thing is very, very routinely watched, of course, by the Royal Navy. They will know what ships are in there. When you have that image on the screen there, Charlie Peters, the vessels that are in the channel at any one time are known. It would have been closely watched, but it's incredibly unusual and incredibly hostile for a foreign Navy ship to start firing at civilian craft anywhere, Charlie Peters.
Yes, and Martin, think back to just a few hours ago, everyone was a bit confused when Sir Keir Starmer's seat was left empty as the Prime Minister missed the G7 leaders' group photo. Well, I think we know why Sir Keir Starmer was not sitting down at that meeting now. He was likely being engaged by senior figures in the MOD and the security services for an update on a Russian warship firing towards British civilians. So a very significant development which will have attracted attention from all of the senior defence and security personnel at that level that's required for briefing the Prime Minister on an incident of this severity happening at 11:40 a.m. our time. And I think it's worth just pouring into some of what the former Defence Secretary John Healey said earlier today, criticising very much the defence investment plan, talking about how they haven't got the right funding for the right jobs at the moment, essentially saying that this is leaving the United Kingdom at risk, with Al Khan's also in his resignation speech, the former defence minister, saying that the defence investment plan was preparing for the wars, was not preparing for the wars we are most likely to fight, saying that the character of warfare is changing at an exceptional speed. Well, this is also a reminder, isn't it, Martin, that sometimes it's the most basic and conventional threats that you need to be prepared for as well. Well, of course, there's so much focus on drone warfare, asymmetric warfare, cyber security, and all the rest of it, geospatial intelligence, and the full gamut of changing capabilities and skills and drills required across all wings of the armed forces. A Navy frigate near your waters firing shots. That's about as Billy Basics a defence matter as it gets in terms of deterrence and action. And that's why there's been 2 Royal Navy River-class patrol vessels around the Grigorovich since it was loitering near British territorial waters yesterday. But of course, it has been doing so regularly throughout the English Channel. I just think back, Martin, to some time ago in the last decade when a smoking Russian vessel was passing through the English Channel, and people reacted almost with scorn at the Russian ship that had to be tugged through the channel, demonstrating what people said at the time was a weakened Russian military, unprepared for actions of the future. But I think what we've seen then is Russia gearing up for confrontation, preparing itself for all actions, and perhaps the Royal Navy going in the opposite direction. Just 6 destroyers and a handful of frigates, many of them unavailable at any one time. You know, I was sailing out of Portsmouth a couple of weeks ago to head down to Normandy for our coverage of D-Day, and a significant portion of the Royal Navy was just sitting in Portsmouth. I think I saw 3 or 4 destroyers, so at least half of the entire fleet sitting there, laid up, being monitored or maintained. And it's precisely in these moments that a Prime Minister and defence officials need to be able to call upon vessels to react to these sorts of incidents to ensure that they are deterred throughout Britain's interests. And of course, Martin, our interests are not just in the United Kingdom and the nearby territorial waters and those international waters around the United Kingdom, but due to our imperial possessions, a hangover from our imperial era, we do have so many interests, and we do have land and territories thousands of miles away from the United Kingdom. We saw, didn't we, in March, the crisis that can occur if sufficient vessels are not prepared to defend these areas, such as in Cyprus, where an Iranian drone managed to strike RAF Akrotiri. The River-class vessels, luckily there are quite a few of them, and they are deployed immediately to this location, 20 nautical miles south of the Isle of Wight, and 2 being on hand was clearly critical to the success of the Royal Navy operation that occurred today, 1 being able to monitor the Admiral Grigorovich, that Russian frigate, while another deployed a seaboat towards the British civilian vessel to provide an update on its security and to make sure that those on board it were safe, uninjured, and that nothing had been damaged. But this is one of Vladimir Putin's Black Sea Fleet ships. It's been around British waters for some weeks now. And while we understand that this action is not linked to the activities of the Royal Marines Commandos and the Royal Navy more generally on Sunday morning in seizing that tanker, they have occurred very close to one another. So we'll wait for more information from the MOD, but a spokesman there has said that they are investigating these reports. We do know, based on what John Healey, the former Defence Secretary, told us in April, that the Russian submarines and also attack submarines and spy vessels have been secretly operating in and around British waters. I remember at that press conference, Martin, John Healey said, "We see you," when addressing the Russian military, saying that we are observing your actions. And they were able to conduct some activity to deter the Russians by dropping some sort of like a sonar device into the sea to alert the Russians to the presence of the British military, to say they're observing them, and that they soon left that location afterwards. But it just goes to show that there has been an escalation in activity in the area, but nothing quite so kinetic as what we saw at 11:40 this morning, with a Russian frigate firing a warning shot towards a British civilian yacht that was sailing around and near to that Russian frigate in international waters, not in British territorial waters, but close to those locations. 2 River-class patrol vessels deployed, Martin, and a Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm Wildcat to observe this troubling situation in the Channel this afternoon.
Thank you, Charles. We understand that the Royal Navy's HMS Mersey was monitoring the Russian ship at the time of today's alleged incident, so they were tracking it and monitoring it. Nevertheless, it will be viewed as an act of extreme hostility in civilian waters on a civilian craft, not Russian waters. It's not their patch. It's not their territory. This would go down very, very badly amidst a time of heightened political tension, military tension. We'll have much more reaction to the breaking news that a Russian warship has fired warning shots at a British yacht in the English Channel. The Ministry of Defence is currently investigating. We'll have all the latest experts' analysis. Stick with us here on GB News. We're back soon. First, though, here's your weather forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many. And with all that cloud, it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius. Some coastal fog, though, developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain, which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning. Starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week, and in the southeast we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Currently, motorists on the M4 westbound are experiencing congestion between junctions 24 at Coldra and 26 at Malpas. Meanwhile, a broken-down vehicle has closed a lane on the A19 southbound in Stockton-on-Tees. In Essex, the M11 southbound is facing delays of around 30 minutes. For those travelling on the M25 anti-clockwise in Thurrock, expect a significant delay of 50 minutes. Additionally, the M60 clockwise near Salford is experiencing delays of about 40 minutes. Train passengers should note that cross-country services at Ely and East Midlands railway routes are disrupted. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won.
Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things up the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you until 6 p.m. Here's what's coming up on today's show. Breaking news for you in this past hour. A Russian warship has fired warning shots at a British yacht in the English Channel in what seems to be a huge escalation of aggression from Vladimir Putin. The Ministry of Defence is investigating. Is this developing into all-out war? Let's bring in now GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who has all of the latest. Charlie Peters, for those joining us at the top of the hour, bring us up to speed of this incredibly tense situation in the English Channel.
Well, Martin, at 11:40 this morning, the Russian Black Sea Fleet frigate, the Admiral Grigorovich, is said to have fired several warning shots on a British civilian yacht that was sailing between the Isle of Wight and Normandy. And the ship that's coming into vision in your screens now is that Russian frigate, the Grigorovich. Now, the shots were fired, we're told, at a distance of approximately 500 yards from that UK-registered yacht. The incident is understood to have taken place about 20 nautical miles south of the Isle of Wight. That would be outside British territorial waters, but very much within the United Kingdom's zone of influence, particularly as it regularly monitors military and commercial shipping traffic through the English Channel. Now, no injuries or damage have been reported by the yacht, and a seaboat from HMS Tyne, which is a river-class patrol vessel, did visit the yacht to gather details and also to ensure that those on the vessel were safe. A separate river-class patrol vessel called HMS Mersey was monitoring the Russian frigate at the time of this incident at 11:40 this morning. Now, HMS Mersey, based on data we've been able to access online from data of ship trafficking, tracking online, we know that the HMS Mersey was monitoring this vessel yesterday. The MOD has confirmed that it is investigating this situation and that the MOD is viewing it as an isolated incident. They are suggesting it's not linked to the boarding of a Russian shadow oil tanker on Sunday morning by Royal Marine Commandos and the Royal Navy.
Charlie Peters, well, I'm delighted now to be joined by the former senior military intelligence officer, Philip Ingram. Philip, welcome to the show. A very, very concerning situation, but perhaps, Philip, one with a sense of inevitability about it. I mean, we're on our knees. We can't launch our Navy at all. Look at what happened with HMS Dragon. And, you know, Vladimir Putin always smells danger, always smells weakness, and here we are.
Well, we've had two Royal Navy vessels monitoring the frigate as it goes through. You know, it was a civilian yacht that has heard something that it's reported as shots. You know, I've sailed that area frequently. You know, the standard procedure if a yacht is getting too close to a large ship and it's the requirement of a yacht to move out of the way would be to hail it on Channel 16 and keep hailing it if it's getting too close. 500 yards is certainly not too close, but we don't know what type of yacht it was, and it would be unusual for a warship then to start to fire warning shots to keep something away. The Russians are not known for their discipline. It could have been, you know, someone trigger happy as they're going through, because they'll have been on a level of alert after the boarding of the Russian Shadow Fleet ship. But it could have been them test firing a weapon or doing some training in international waters, which is allowed under the international laws of the sea, provided the right notices have been put in place to make sure that the area that they're firing into is kept safe from other shipping and from aircraft if they're firing in the air. There's a lot of ifs in this, and we need to wait until we get more information, if in fact we ever do get more information about it.
But there are also a lot of questions to be asked about the broader antagonism, let's face it, between the United Kingdom and Russia. As only yesterday, our Prime Minister, two men were sentenced for an arson attack on our Prime Minister, acting upon the agency of Russia, perhaps the Kremlin of Vladimir Putin. We're seeing today in the G7 in Evian, the world leaders talking about helping Ukraine with more air defence, more money, more sanctions on Russia. You know, all of these things are applying pressure points, and it just revs up the tension there, Philip.
Oh, very much so. And this is where the government needs to wake up and recognise, and the statements that came out from John Healey, the former Secretary of State for Defence, and Al Cairns, former Minister in Defence, that we we are effectively under attack by Russia today, and the public need to recognise this, and we have been for quite some time. We go back to the attack in London on Alexander Litvinenko with polonium-210. We go back to the Novichok attack on Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in Salisbury. We go to the cyber attacks that are going in. We go to the constant monitoring and interfering with our undersea cables, whether they be power cables or data cables or other. We look at the warehouses burning down in London where equipment is being sent off to Ukraine. Individuals have been prosecuted. They were from crime gangs, but have been recruited by the Russian GRU, their first intelligence directorate. We see this link to the arson attacks on Keir Starmer's interests and linked to Russian intelligence. We are under daily attack, and people turn around and say, this isn't affecting me. Well, it is affecting you on a daily basis. Just look at the fuel prices that there are since the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, and then what Donald Trump has done against Iran. But Iran is linked to Russia. It's all linked. It's all affecting us on a daily basis. And unless we start to invest in defence, it's going to get worse.
Philip Ingram, it could very soon be affecting our viewers and listeners, because we're £3 trillion in debt. We don't have any money to pay for the defences that we need. We saw the amount that made John Healey resign, 0.08% of GDP towards defence. Donald Trump's been saying that NATO members should pay 5%. The biscuit tin is completely empty. Philip Ingram, don't rule out some kind of emergency tax rise on the British public, or a huge loan from the international banks.
Well, I'm sorry, the biscuit tin isn't empty. They're prioritising the biscuit tin elsewhere. If the UK implemented all of the net zero targets that Ed Miliband, or Ed Milliwatt as I call him, wants for the 13.6 billion he was given in the first week of this new government, it would impact global warming by 0.01%. It wouldn't affect it at all. There's 13.6 billion. That is a political choice to spend today and not park to whenever it could be financially viable in the future. You look at the fact that it's costing us more in education with the VAT on private schools. You look at the welfare budget going up by 42 billion. That's a political choice to bring more welfare in. You look at the billions that are being spent on cycle routes through our cities. That is, a fantastic thing. It's great. I enjoy cycling along cycle routes, but that is a political decision to bring this in now, today. The government made a political decision to have a strategic defence review. This wasn't the previous government that made that decision. This government did it. They said they'd accept all of the recommendations of that strategic defence review, and now they're saying we're not going to pay for any of it. I'm sorry, it's a farce.
Philip Ingram, you raised some excellent points. These are decisions that every government must take. It's all about political choices. But we've seen, Philip, the chances of getting cuts to benefits from this government seem vanishingly thin. It'll be a cold day in hell. The English Channel will freeze over, you feel, before any benefit cuts are made by this government.
Well, yeah, you're 100% right, and they are. This is down to political choices, and this is down to the voters to recognise that these are political choices. This is not something that you can blame on the Tories and previous governments. You can blame the state of defence today on previous governments, going right back to Tony Blair. But you can't blame what is going on the political decisions that are being made and where the funding line is being drawn today on any previous government. This is what is happening with our government today, and we've got John Healey, who is a seasoned Labour Party old hat, has had to resign. We've got Al Cairns, who is the most decorated MP that we've got in Parliament, who knows how to lead troops in operational situations, and he's turning around saying this isn't right. We've got Chief of the Defence Staff turning around today and talking about what he called Ardell money. That's in-year spending money, and saying we're going to have to stop training and stop doing things that cost money today. At the same time, we've got our politicians. We've got Keir Starmer turning around saying he's increasing defence spending. I'm sorry, I would say, is he, and would use a word beginning with B, which I won't put on broadcast, but they're lying to us. The government is simply lying to us.
Philip Ingram, thank you very much indeed for your impassioned words. Appreciate your company as ever. Former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram, in the dramatic situation breaking out in the English Channel. To bring you up to speed, Russian Navy has fired a warning shot at a British yacht. We understand that took place in the sea, the channel between the Isle of Wight and Normandy, so in international waters, not inside British sovereign waters as such, which surely would have been seen as an outright declaration of war, perhaps. Catherine Forster, you've been waiting patiently, and you were speaking about the West Streeting defence speech earlier on, and also, of course, John Healey addressed Parliament, so did Al Carnes today, and there's very much a feeling of predictability about this. Our defences are pathetically thin, they're stretched, they're underfunded, and we know one thing that Vladimir Putin exploits is weakness.
Absolutely. I mean, the Prime Minister has said over and over again the need to go further and faster. They're spending more money since the end of the Cold War. They're upping defence spending. But the point is that the world has fundamentally changed, and we used to sort of lead the way, really, after America in terms of defence spending, and we're now being left behind. So John Healey, in a very powerful resignation speech, pointed out that over half of NATO countries are going to get to 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. We're currently only committing to get to 2.68. And John Healey, quite damningly, I thought, saying our adversaries don't follow timetables set by the Treasury, because we know that the resistance has come from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. We had Sir Richard Knighton today, Chief of the Defence Staff, telling a parliamentary committee that day-to-day operations and training would have to be cut if they don't get more money. We've got a new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis. There were noises that maybe more money would be made available. At the moment, the government is holding firm. They were accused of corrosive complacency, I think, by one of the authors of the Strategic Defence Review a couple of months ago. And yes, Wes Streeting, he would like to be PM. He was at a big economic speech this lunchtime. He was saying, look, why are we spending £4.3 billion on cycling and walking some of this money? Really, there is an urgent need to fund our defence.
Excellently put. Now, it's worth reminding ourselves that earlier on at the G7 summit in Evian, Keir Starmer did talk about the increased hostility between the United Kingdom and Russia. Let's take a listen.
And justice has been done, so I'm pleased in that respect, particularly for my family who were affected by it. I think it has to be seen in its broader context. Here we are at the G7. We've just had the Ukraine session, and actually there was real unity in the room, in the G7, about the fact that Ukraine is doing better now, regaining territory, that the sanctions are having a real impact on Russia, and a real sense that now is the moment for all of us as a G7 to ramp up the pressure. And obviously you'll have seen this morning we put on even further sanctions in relation to Russia.
Well, there's drama in the English Channel. Sir Keir Starmer is in France at yet another summit, this time the G7. Let's get my next guest in now. Delighted to be joined by the Reform UK spokeswoman for Education, Skills and Equalities, and that's Suella Braverman, MP. Suella, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Very, very concerning situation in the Channel, but perhaps one that feels very, very inevitable.
I think there is a sense of inevitability.
Okay, Suella Braverman seems to have frozen in time there. We'll try and get Suella back in a moment's time. OK, let's get my next guest up. I'm joined by Paul Connew, political commentator Paul Connew. Paul, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. May I put that same point to you? Vladimir Putin exploits and smells and censors weakness. Is what he does. No one's saying he's a good guy, he's a tyrant. But when we have a defence minister... When we have... Paul, hang on, mate. When we've got a defence minister who's resigning, saying that we cannot defend ourselves, Al Carnes resigned because we cannot defend ourselves, the money isn't there, we're vulnerable, and hey presto, here we are.
Indeed. I thought that John Healey's resignation speech today was very powerful in the Commons, as was Al Carnes. We have to find a lot more money, for defence. That's unquestionably so. And I think there are signs, from what I hear, that Keir Starmer is, as long as he survives as Prime Minister, is moving in that direction. But we've got to find a lot of money, probably in the next 4 years, at least 25, 28 billion, and that is a lot of money.
Yeah, but Paul, that money could come from cuts to benefits for foreigners, cuts to foreign aid, cuts to people on benefits in the United Kingdom, cuts to net zero. But the point is, every time the government suggests there are cuts, the backbenchers won't have it. So we're caught in this death grip of massive spending and massive outgoings. And Paul Conroy, the only way out of that trap is tax rises or more loans, more debts, and the taxpayers pay for them.
Well, there are only three ways to go, or a combination of those three ways. One, in no particular order, would be an increase in general taxation. The other would be a cut in the welfare budget and possibly other budgets too. And thirdly is, as a sort of war bonds, is to go to the international markets who may be more inclined to be supportive if this was for defence spending than perhaps for other areas.
But the problem with that is that war bonds are paid back by the taxpayer. There's no free money here, and so you know, it was never a manifesto pledge to raise. Well, it was a manifesto promise not to raise taxation. But hey, don't let a good disaster go to waste. We could see a huge tax hike from the government to pay for all this.
Well, even as a Labour simpatico commentator, I argued that they shouldn't have made the pledges on no tax increases because the situation globally was becoming menacing and dangerous, and that was a rash commitment to make. But I'm not sure you can't sell to the British public, which is what was being said and argued by both the outgoing Defence Secretary and Al Khan's today, that you have to persuade the public that this is, the only way to go, because nothing matters more than national security, the safety of the nation, the safety of the people. And of course, we had the Chief of the Defence Staff addressing the House of Lords committee this morning, saying very much the same thing. So I think this is a question, whether Keir Starmer remains Prime Minister or whether he is succeeded by someone else, then they're going to have to address that. And the biggest question there is being able to sell to the British public why you've made the changes and why you're going to have to find the money, even though it's going to inflict pain. But there's no pain greater than if you were to be invaded, for example. In fact, we need...
Well, Paul, people have been saying that we're being invaded every day by dinghies. 710 crossed the Channel yesterday. 10,000 this year. We're unable to defend ourselves from small boats. So, of course, we're unable to defend ourselves from Russian frigates. That's the point. We're a laughingstock. We're a joke nation. We used to be Royal Britannia. Now we can't stop dinghies coming across from Calais.
But that's a different argument. Look, I'm pretty firm on cracking down on the small boats, and indeed, Labour have been doing better on that. I mean, we have a pretty tough Home Secretary in Shabina Mahmood, who isn't popular on the left of the party, but who is proving a pretty effective figure. She's somebody who might just join the leadership race, although I suspect the left of the party wouldn't support her. But I hear there's a group of MPs on the right of the Labour Party and centrists who are still hoping they can persuade the outgoing Defence Secretary to actually run for the leadership. So far he's indicating he's not interested, but I'm not totally convinced he isn't persuadable.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. I think a convenient metaphor to use as we are having this conversation is, well, maybe that's just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're talking about who might be the leader of the party when we can't defend our own shores. We can't defend our own shores from daily onslaughts of dinghies.
But it depends if you have a leader who's strong enough to actually do so.
No, Paul, no one's been strong enough to stop it. No one. This has been going on since 2018. And you know, isn't it funny how there's a full-blown diplomatic incident in the Channel on the day after 710 illegals just simply walked into Britain on thingies. Paul Connew, the events are connected. It's an impotence in the face of seaborne hostilities. Paul Connew, thank you very, very much indeed. Now, still to come, we'll continue to get more reaction to the breaking news as you join us at 5:20 that a Russian warship has fired warning shots at a British yacht in the English Channel, an act of huge international hostility. Is this an act of all-out war? That's next here on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK. Oh, thank you.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:23 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, just a quick recap on that huge breaking news story. A Russian warship has reportedly fired shots, warning shots, at a British yacht in the English Channel. And we can now speak with the former Royal Navy office and security expert, James Gator. James, welcome to the show. We're hearing fresh reports now, claims from the Russians that perhaps the frigate had difficulty controlling its direction. It was firing a warning shot, not in hostility, but as a warning to the yacht. Seriously?
Well, good afternoon, Martin. I don't think that explanation, if you'll forgive the pun, holds much water. There are recognised methods for a warship or any other ship to indicate that they are not under command, as it is known, and they don't include the firing of shots or the use of maroons or any other sound-making apparatus.
The location of this is key, is it not, James Gator? We understand it's between the Isle of Wight and Normandy, so in international waters, not in British waters. If this had have been in British waters, James Gator, and the shots were fired, would that be considered an outright act of war?
Well, in direct answer to your question, it depends how the shots were fired and whether indeed shots were fired. But let's just address the points in turn. First of all, the reports are that this took place approximately 20 miles south of the Isle of Wight. And at that location, the English Channel is around 75 miles wide. And with 12 miles being the recognised territorial waters, it is entirely possible that this incident took place just outside British and just outside French territorial waters, maybe even deliberately so, as that in an escalatory pose, this incident took place in international waters, but in close proximity to two NATO allies.
So therefore, the claim would be, well, this is effectively in maritime no man's land. So as such, there's no direct act of conflict towards the French or the British. How convenient?
Well, international waters are not no man's land. There are many regulations that limit the actions of ships in these circumstances. And when passing through a narrow strait, such as the English Channel, ships exercise something called not only the right of free passage, but the right of innocent passage. And that means that they are not permitted to uncover weaponry or fly aircraft without permission, those kinds of things. So it is clearly escalatory. It would, if it is indeed the incident as reported, be something that may well be deliberate, given that the ship concerned, the Admiral Grigorievich, has been escorting Russian shadow fleet vessels over a significant period of time, indeed has been resupplied by an auxiliary vessel so that she can continue to fulfill those duties, even though after the actions we saw recently, shadow fleet vessels are in fact turning and travelling around Great Britain, in fact the whole of the British Isles, so as to avoid the Channel.
James Gator, it must be pointed out again that the English Channel, and in particular the Strait of Dover, is the narrowest part of the channel. It's generally thought to be the world's busiest shipping channel. 500 vessels pass through there every day, plus quite a few illegal dinghies, I hasten to add. You can't just go rattling around in the channel, rattling off rounds randomly at yachts. You just can't do that.
You're absolutely right. At its narrowest point, I believe the channel is around 24 miles wide. And at that point, there are no international waters. But yes, you're quite right. You can't just go around, even in international waters, firing at vessels. But we need to be clear as to what's happened. And at this point in time, as with any breaking news story, it isn't immediately clear. What we know is that reports have been received by HM Coast Guard of a British registered yacht that has apparently been engaged by the Admiral Grigorievich with quote-unquote warning shots. Now, those could have been with live rounds fired over the vessel or close proximity to the vessel, or indeed just sound-making explosions and the like, all of which are importantly different in the context of warnings. But it's certainly not a welcome situation. I totally agree.
James Gator, the MOD seems to be putting out statements saying, oh, it's quite routine that Royal Navy vessels are shadowing Russian ships in this area, as if that makes things better. You know, to a lot of people listening and watching this show today, James Gator, that's a deeply alarming situation. How routine is it in recent times, in your great experience, for Russian vessels, be it above the sea or beneath the sea in terms of submarines, to simply be going through international waters in the English Channel like this?
Well, it's very routine. I mean, it's important, as you mentioned just a moment ago, Martin, that the people viewing and listening to this programme realise that the English Channel is indeed a very busy strait. And of course, the concept of straits, of which there are, a number that are extraordinarily important in the world, and we are learning about the Strait of Hormuz quite a lot of late. The Strait of Dover is also very important, not only to our economic security, but to numerous other states that surround us as well. And as a result, that waterway is very busy. And that includes vessels transiting from the Baltic through to the Atlantic, which would include Russian vessels travelling from St. Petersburg, for example. That is entirely legitimate activity, notwithstanding, for example, the Shadow Fleet. So in that context, it is totally normal business for Russian vessels to be travelling through the Strait of Dover. But what is not normal is for those vessels to be engaging in any sort of activity as reported at the present time. And furthermore, to answer your other point, yes, of late we have seen a greater number of incursions, both subsea. Recently, we've seen activities reported in off the western coast of Scotland, but also, as you know, activities in the Channel with the boarding of the Smirtos in roughly the same location, by the way, as this incident has taken place this morning.
James Gator, just to explain to our viewers and listeners, on our screens now, we have pictures of Vladimir Putin aboard this very vessel called the Admiral Grigorovich. These are images from July 2025, 1 year ago. Here we go, a presidential inspection by Vladimir Putin of what is clearly being put out there as a flagship ship, one of which Vladimir Putin is very proud. So just a year ago, look at it. It's the full VIP treatment, the captain's table, Navy top brass there, welcoming Vladimir Putin aboard. It makes it even less plausible, is it not, James Gator? This, let's be frank, it sounds like a Shaggy Dog story that's coming out today, saying that there's a claim that this frigate lost control of its engines somehow. It was having difficulty controlling its movements. As a consequence, perhaps an engine problem. It sounded an alert to the yacht, a civilian yacht, to avoid a collision, and started rattling off warning shots to misdirect the yacht. James Gator, call me Sherlock Holmes. That sounds far-fetched.
As I mentioned a moment ago, Martin, that it is indeed far-fetched. There exists an entire rule book for how vessels have to interact with one another, or in the open ocean, inland waterways, everywhere, in fact. And as I say, that doesn't include the firing of warning shots, certainly not in close proximity to other nation states. So, yes, this is, if true, an implausible explanation as to what's happened. But I do look forward to understanding what has actually occurred. There are many potential circumstances other than some grand plan. But obviously, at the moment, it is concerning. We have seen an uptick in Russian activity, and if the information that's coming out from the Russians at the present time is indeed true, then I would venture to say this is a message in naval form.
James Gator, that message is being sent at a time where the defence minister has resigned over, let's face it, a pathetic GDP offering of 0.08% of GDP for defence at a time where Donald Trump is commanding 5%. The Prime Minister saying 3%. That money is not forthcoming. The whole world can see Britain's weakness. Rule Britannia is wide open. We can't stop dinghies coming across the Channel every day. We have an inability to deploy HMS Dragon to Cyprus at the very beginning of the Iran conflict. Scenes which I think embarrassed everyone who served in the Navy in their entire history. Vladimir Putin, this wouldn't be lost on him. He would see the fact that Britain appears vulnerable.
Well, I completely agree with that latter point, Martin. There's no doubt that our adversaries are alive to the open source intelligence that our investment in our armed forces is far below where it should be. And notwithstanding the much vaunted recent increases, it is very clear that they don't go far enough to even make our existing commitments. The reputed £28 billion black hole, as reported back in January, being replenished by a 14 billion or maybe 13 billion contribution as was offered by the Treasury prior to John Healey's resignation earlier. So it's very clear that the Treasury's priority when it comes to public spending is not the military. The real point, though, is what are the people's priorities? If the people's priorities are spending more money on the military, then the people need to make that clear at the ballot box and elect politicians that wish to spend public money, because there's no lack of money. What there is lack of is budget. And it's just a matter of allocating budget and cutting our cloth accordingly. And were we to do so, we would find that we would have a more appropriate budgetary position for an island nation with a number of adversaries who wish to do us ill.
James Gates, it's a shame that the Defence Minister's post is filled. You just made an excellent application for it. I think you made a huge amount of common sense. You're entirely right. It's about choices. And I think we've made bad choices for decades, and it's left us wide open to incidents like today. Thank you so much for your expertise and your patience and sharing your knowledge with us, former Royal Navy officer and security expert James Gater. Back to the studio in Westminster. Catherine Forster, the politics of this are fascinating. On the same day that John Healey gave his resignation speech in Parliament, as did Al Carnes, the former Armed Forces Minister, West Streeting on manoeuvres. Everybody talking about how exposed we are in terms of defence, decades of mismanagement, in a sense, a plague on all their houses.
Yes, absolutely.
Decades before. But this happens on the same day. A lot of people look at this and thinking, this isn't a coincidence.
We don't know exactly what has happened with this vessel, but what we do know is that Russia is up to no good and on manoeuvres. We see it again and again with the shadow fleet, with disinformation. We heard yesterday the attacks on the Prime Minister's properties and cars, links back to Russia. They are trying to destabilise us and other European countries. We've had drones over many different countries, and so the list goes on. Interference with undersea cables too. They are waging a grey war with us already. And what is very clear to people like John Healey and others, he said today, our adversaries do not follow timetables set by the Treasury. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Rachel Reeves does not want to give more money to defence. 13.5 billion more doesn't begin to cut it, according to the authors of the Strategic Defence Review and many others. We've had a warning today from Sir Richard Knighton saying to a parliamentary committee that operations and training will have to be cut. And yet the Prime Minister still says that we are going further and faster. The rhetoric and the reality do not match, and we are being left behind with other European allies that are really waking up. Countries like Germany, who were asleep at the wheel for so long, have embarked on a massive borrowing spree and are rearming at pace, along with countries like Poland, who are spending an absolute bomb on defence.
Thank you, Catherine. We are now hearing reports that a Royal Navy Wildcat HMA-2 helicopter is also currently operating over the English Channel. Now, the situation seems to be in control, but escalating. Around 11:40 a.m. this morning, warning shots fired from around 500 yards away by a Russian frigate towards a civilian craft. We understand is still to come. We'll continue to get more reaction to that breaking news that a Russian warship has fired warning shots at an English yacht in the English Channel. Here's the question: is this an act of all-out warfare from Russia? Meanwhile, though, if you're travelling home from school or from work, stay safe and stick with us.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M4 southbound, 3 lanes are restricted, causing delays around junction 33, Capel-Lanilturn. The M60 in Salford faces heavy congestion with 40-minute delays, clearing by 10:15 tonight. M42 southbound has pedestrian-related lane closures expected to resolve by 6:30. In Essex, the M11 southbound is reduced to 2 lanes due to a collision causing 40-minute delays. M25 anti-clockwise in Thurrock experiences near 50-minute delays due to a broken-down vehicle. And on the trains, cross-country and East Midlands Railway face disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many, and with all that cloud it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius, some coastal fog though developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning, starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week. And in the southeast, we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:43 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now back to the breaking news story this hour. It's this. A Russian Navy frigate has fired warning shots at a British yacht in the English Channel. The sources have told GB News that a Russian warship fired those shots at the yacht after it reportedly came too close in foggy conditions. Let's now speak with the immigration expert and former British Army officer Henry Bolton. Henry, a precarious situation in the English Channel, and one in many ways that feels inevitable. Britain unable to defend ourselves, vulnerable in the waters.
Indeed, Martin. And I mean, I have to say, to start with, that this occurred in the UK's what's called exclusive economic zone, which is there are sort of a number of categories of water, if you like, that belong to a country. As you move out from the shoreline, there's the territorial waters, and then there's the exclusive economic zone. And in that's where this took place. And in the EEZ, a foreign warship on naval operations can legally fire warning shots at a civilian vessel to warn it to stay away. So technically, from a legal perspective, what the Admiral Grigorovich has done is legal. under international maritime law. However, given the context that just a few days ago, British forces seized and detained the Smyrtos, which is a shadow tanker, a Russian oil tanker that has been breaching sanctions and has been sailing in international waters unlawfully. It's not correctly registered or safety certified. And so, but that's a Russian vessel breaching sanctions and so on. And I think you've got to take this into that context. As your earlier speaker said, this will have been a deliberate, albeit legal, albeit sort of legally justified. It's an act that is sending a very clear message to, frankly, what is a very timid British Prime Minister who has failed repeatedly to take decisive action, even though on various issues, even though he's talked tough. So I think this is going to up the ante and deter him from taking further law enforcement operation, as he could legitimately do in waters that we're responsible for.
Henry Bolton, it might be legally permissible, but coming the day after, 2 Ukrainians were charged, jailed, for under Russian influence as Russian agents trying to firebomb our Prime Minister. Politically, it's completely unacceptable.
No, I totally agree. And one of the things that, again, this government and the previous government have done a very poor job of is keeping the British people informed as to the threat that this country is under. We are under daily multiple cyber attacks from the Russian Federation and have been for many years. We've got the air incursions, Russian strategic bombers who are probing British airspace, flying directly towards the United Kingdom and then turning away at the last moment. We've got submarine activity. We've got. There have been many occasions, Martin, when the Ministry of Defence has had to call on allies to help support us in monitoring Russian naval and aviation activity in our airspace and under our seas. We are absolutely John Healey and Al Carnes were absolutely right to resign at the failure of this government to provide the necessary resources to ensure that this country is defended. We are not well defended. That is no fault of the armed forces themselves, but a succession of governments who have paid lip service and to the nation's defence. And I think their strategy has been one of let's cross our fingers and hope for the best, rather than a pragmatic response.
Henry Bolton, we have to leave it there. Always a pleasure to have your expertise. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Now, coming up next, we'll return to the other breaking news this afternoon from earlier, that the government will now apparently step in to save the Dartmoor ponies from a mass culling. That's next here on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
You're a stripper for nearly 20 years now.
Yeah.
And what you do now has changed. How has it changed and why?
I think beforehand they would book you individually. There would be a lot of stripograms, and that would be bookings for like birthdays, hen parties, and ultimately you would probably be around their house or something like that, or in a small bar. What it's kind of moved into now is more shows. Dream Boys, it's really popular. It's up and down the country, and what you'll find is they'll get 20, 30 girls together and they'll go out and they'll go to the show because they've got the drag queen, they've got the dancers, they've got the stripper, they've got the whole night's entertainment.
Is that because they feel uncomfortable with the stripper, or is it a woke thing? Is it like it's about objectifying you because they don't objectify themselves, so why should you be objectified?
I think it could be possibly a bit about... some of them might think if we get them around the house, there might be a person that's uncomfortable with it. Whereas if they book the show, you're free to go to the show or not.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess Anne and the way that she has brought up her family is really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, you've got daughter and son who've not taken on royal titles, who've just got on with their lives.
I think now, in retrospect, we can say it was an inspired decision of the Royal Princess Anne not to have her husband receive a grand peerage title, which meant, of course, that her children would just be plain Mr. and Mrs. Zara is Mrs. Tyndall, he is Mr. Phillips, and that's allowed them actually to have a much more normal life, not being in the necessary glare that attaches when you have the HRH prefix to your name and become a duke or a duchess or whatever. And yes, they have had great lives in the private sector.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dorothea served in preparation for D-Day. And Dorothea, how does it feel being here today, joining other veterans?
We suddenly felt that it had been worthwhile giving up our youth, our years as teenagers. No such things existed. You were a child until you were 14 or 16, depending on the year. And after that, okay, you're fit to be killed for the country. And it was naturally assumed that everybody would willingly do their bit for England. And they would have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good mate, time is 10 to 6 now. Let's return now to our other big breaking news story from earlier on this afternoon. It's this. The government has now said they will not allow plans to cull Dartmoor ponies. But Natural England says the move is necessary to protect the diversity of Dartmoor. Seriously, who on earth ever thought this was a good idea? Well, I'm joined in the studio now in Westminster by the Shadow Secretary for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Dr. Neil Hudson. Dr. Hudson, a ridiculous idea. How did this ever get past the drawing board?
I have no idea, Martin. It's a ridiculous idea. It's a scientifically unnecessary idea, and actually the concept of culling hundreds of healthy ponies that do so much for the natural environment in that area in terms of biodiversity, but also the mental health impacts of the people that would have to be involved in culling these animals. And this is a crazy decision that Natural England, an unaccountable Quango, arm's-length Quango, that actually we need to make sure that ministers step in and formally reverse this. We've heard that the government are now thinking about reversing this. We've got to make sure that they put their money where their mouth is and reverse this crazy, outrageous policy.
Well, Catherine Forsey, you put this to government at lobby earlier on. They gave you a quick line. What did they say?
They said the government will not allow the Dartmoor ponies to be culled. They clearly realise that this is massively unpopular. The government is struggling, let's say, with popularity already. 1,000 ponies on Dartmoor that have been there for 3,500 years. I mean, they couldn't pick a worse subject, could they? So I think they've realised how politically toxic it would be.
Well, I'm encouraged that they've listened to His Majesty's official opposition, and we've raised this and we've said they've got to reverse this. I want to see this in black and white now, that they're going to, under no circumstances, cull these precious animals. In terms of the gene pool of these animals, what they do for the biodiversity, in terms of eating invasive species of grasses, millennia and things like that, they actually protect the environment, and actually they coexist with the farm animals. And so if we lose them, they're lost for good. So this is something I want to see formally the government to say we are U-turning on this crazy idea from Natural England.
Anybody who's been there will know that they're just wonderful, cherished, gorgeous, assets.
Yeah.
They're assets.
Yeah, yeah. And they have been grazing there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe even hundreds of years before Christ. They've been there a long, long time. They are part of our natural heritage. They are precious. And if you get them down to fewer than 1,000, there's about 1,000 breeding mares at the moment. If you get lower than that, in terms of the gene pool, what that means for the existence of that species is crazy. So we've got to make sure that they survive.
I've got to say, some of the more printable comments that you left us today have been saying things like Natural England should be sent to the knacker's yard. Seriously, how on earth did anybody ever think this was a good idea? It's absolutely beggars belief, the kind of parallel universe living in Quango land. Thank you very much, Dr. Neil Hudson, for joining us. Short but sweet. Catherine Forsey, you've been superb all day on the show. Thank you very much. Up next, of course, is Michelle Dewberry, Jubes & Co., the queen of prime time debate. Jubes, what's on your menu?
Martin, great programme as ever. Well, of course, I will be looking at the goings-on in the Channel when it comes to that Russian warship. I also, though, want to look at this. This is an interesting poll. 1 in 6 Britons think that the growth of the Muslim population in this country is, quote, a threat to UK culture. Is it or not? And also a trillionaire. Should anyone ever be able to become one of those people crying about Elon Musk's wealth? And I also want to talk about the state of the nation as well. Majid Nawaz and Reese will join me in a sec.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many. And with all that cloud, it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius. Some coastal fog, though, developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain, which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning. Starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week. And in the southeast, we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M25 anti-clockwise between junctions 1A and 31 in Thurrock, a broken down vehicle is causing hour-and-a-half delays. The M4 westbound in Wokingham has 3 lanes closed due to an accident, with delays until 7:15. The M60 clockwise in Salford faces 30-minute delays. In Staffordshire, the A50 eastbound at Uttoxeter North has 10-minute delays. The A419 northbound near Swindon has a broken vehicle causing 30-minute delays. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway and Great Western Railway are disrupted on some routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax